Is
Okay. That's the cue to you.
Am I ready to go?
Is the applicant here, Alex, for 90 line?
One of the speakers is here. Let me see if the other is.
Well, if we got one, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Jay.
Yep. Welcome, everybody, to the June 11th, 2020 virtual meeting of the Board of Architectural Review Small. My name is Jay Claypool. I'm going to chair tonight's meeting. With me is a full complement of board members: Clem Gardner, Fillmore Wilson, Julia Martin, and Bill Huey. With us, as always, is city staff, Dennis Dowd and Alex Howell. The order of the meeting will be as follows. Staff will give a brief introduction and overview of the project. The applicant will then have a 10-minute period of time in which to present, and that is anyone and everyone speaking on behalf of the applicant. Please state your name for the record. After that, there will be a public comment period of 10 minutes, followed by city staff comments and recommendations as to the application. Then the applicant will have a 3-minute opportunity to clarify or address any comments received from both the public as well as from staff. The floor will then close. The board will discuss the matter and ultimately vote. The board may ask questions of staff, the applicant, the public even at any time. We, sort of by custom, tend to start asking questions immediately following the applicant's presentation. There were 4 items that were on the originally published agenda that have been either withdrawn or deferred and will not be heard tonight. Those are 6 Judith Street, 2 South Battery, 1 Water, and 1 Water. A reminder to everyone to please turn off your cell phones, other devices, quiet your dogs if that's possible. And lastly, please limit your comments to architecture only, which is solely our purview. At this point, Dennis, could you provide a brief overview of the virtual meeting protocol for us?
Yes. Alex, if you could advance. And this is really just sign up information. We don't need to review this now. Go to the next one. Okay, so here's, sort of meeting protocol information. Staff will control the PowerPoint presentation. It includes everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with the submittal requirements. So applicants simply need to ask staff to advance to the next slide during the presentation. We have no way to give you the clicker as it is. Applicants, staff, and board members are required to give their name whenever speaking. So please try to remember that, especially board members and applicants, pretty critical. Video and microphone has been disabled for all attendees. Attendees, not board members or staff, will only be given the capability to speak when they are called on during the public comment period. The chat and the Q&A functions have been disabled for everyone. During the public comment period, the applicants, and that's all team members for the applicant, and the public have been required to register, indicate the project they wish to comment on, and submit any documents in advance of the meeting. And just as in an in-person meeting, all applications heard today are part of a public meeting format, so that if you've registered and you'll speak during the public comment portion of the meeting, you'll need to state your name and address. Members of the public that register will be called in order by project. And we ask that if you speak during the public comment portion, remain in the meeting, the completion of the item that you speak on, in the event that the board has any questions for you. Staff will call on registered members of the public to speak for the project. Unregistered members of the public who raise their hand will not be called on. Board members should open the participants panel so that each member can see the status of other board members' mics and cameras. Next slide, please, Alex. Board members will be polled by the chair for comments and for their vote on a motion. Each member when voting should respond nay in favor or nay not in favor, and the chairman will reread the motion verbatim and the board member making the motion should correct the chairman if he's not read the motion correctly and accurately. If a board member needs to recuse, he will be temporarily removed from the meeting and placed back in the meeting at the start of the next agenda item. And I don't anticipate we'll need to go into executive session, but if that happens, then the board members will have to call into a separate video and audio line on Zoom. Staff will issue meeting results, including staff comments and board motion to the applicant following the meeting. And they'll also be posted on the city website. And the proceedings are being recorded. And beyond that, I think we're ready to go with agenda item number 1. If you go to the next slide, Alex. And that is 90 Lyon Street, requesting partial demolition of rear portions of the structure. They're not rated in Canterbury, Elliott Borough circa 1902 to 1944 and post 1973, and the Historic Materials Demo Purview District. Next slide, please, Alex. Everybody hear me? Okay. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So here's the location of the property. You were there this morning at the corner of Line and Cumming Street. Next slide. Alex. It's a view of the building fronting on the street, on Line Street. Next slide, please. And then a view looking northwest with the structures behind the main structure in the front that the engineer has broken down into A, B, C, and D. Next slide, please. A closer view of one of the, actually this is the D building, one of the original. Next. Alex.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Next slide. And it's the view looking east on Line Street. Next. Is there a lag here, Alex, when we're advancing these slides? Seems like it's taking a long time.
There must
Looking
be.
west from the intersection of Line and Cumming. Next, please. And with that, I'll turn it over to the applicant for their presentation. And if you could please allow the applicant to unmute themselves, Alex.
All right, I've promoted Julie O'Connor and Russell Rosen to panelists, and they can unmute themselves.
Awesome. Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is Julie O'Connor. I just wanted to thank everybody for taking the time this morning to come out to the site. And Alex, if you could maybe go to the sheet that has the photos on it, perhaps. Perfect. So as we discussed today out on the site, and as Dennis just indicated, there are sort of 4 separate pieces of this addition to the rear section of 90 Line. The 2-story section that's closest to the main front building is post 1973, and the very most rear section is also post 1973. They do not show up on the Sanborn. The section that you can see in the photo that has a gable roof on it is probably the oldest section. And as we discussed on site today, there is now a slab underneath this whole building. There were sections of the wall that were removed for rot and now have concrete block. Stucco was applied directly to the siding. One of the walls has been moved. And so there's a lot that has happened to this little building. And then the next section that doesn't have a roof, obviously you saw today has collapsed. The whole east side of the building now has corrugated metal on it, so no historic siding there anymore. And so essentially, and I'll let Russell speak a little bit more after this, but we just have found that there's not a lot left to this to begin with. And certainly also, if we were to try to renovate it, it wouldn't really hold up to structural stability for a renovation as well. So Russell, do you have anything you want to add?
Basically just want to remind folks that that wall to the west, in the west elevation, that wall at the gable roof section, that was evidently relocated at some time in the history of the building. The framing on the east side of the portion with the gable, evidently the lower portion of the stud wall and the sills were all decayed and removed and replaced with concrete block. Those are the things I think of a structural issue, which will make it impossible really to salvage and renovate the property as it is.
Okay, thank you both. Does anyone from the board have a question of Julie or Russell right now before we go to public comment?
Could you? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's Bill Huey. Mr. Rosen, the replaced block wall you had mentioned, and then the other relocated wall in the gable and the gabled roof portion of the structure. Can you tell approximate dates of those from your assessment, or?
Well, on the west wall where they shifted the wall over, it looks to me like they were using salvaged materials and using old framing techniques. So my gut reaction probably is 1940s, that sort of thing. I didn't see any modern materials, but I'm thinking that we're really just looking at old framing materials that had another life somewhere else. And then as far as the block wall goes, it's actually just the lower portion, just to get the framing up off the ground. Probably in, maybe a little later, 1960s perhaps, but the framing and all is just plain old balloon framing from way back when.
Thank you.
And this is Julia Martin. I was just going to verify. I think this is an X-zone flood-wise. Is that correct?
Based on our work next door, I would say that's correct. I don't know what Julie's research indicated.
Yeah, I have a survey here. Let me just.
I can confirm it. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's next.
Okay, any other questions right now?
Jay, I have one if I can.
Sure.
Also, elevation wall pushed in to the building?
No, actually, that wall on the west elevation that you see is actually about 16 inches further out. Why anybody?
Because the overhang is bigger there than it is on the east side.
Well, exactly what they did was they ran new rafters from the ridge, if you want to call it a ridge, and extended it out over the wall and created that overhang.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
May I ask one more question to Mr. Rosen in light of that information? The new rafters, when you say new, obviously relative to the age of the building, but any idea when that work might have been done?
Well, it's sawn dimension lumber, so again, it could be 1940s, 1950s.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to public comment right now, Alex, please.
We don't have any public comment on this item. No speakers or letters.
Then staff recommendation.
Okay, well, this application is for demolition only, as I said, and it's in half to 3-story district. So anything that I'm sure going forward could be 3 stories. The portion of the structure noted in that not appear on the 73 Sanborn map, as they mentioned, therefore less than 50 years of age. So they're at a purview for BAR for demolition. The portion noted as B appears on the Sanborn 55. For BAR for demolition. And then the portion noted as section C may date prior to 1888, but the footprint may have changed. In no case does it show up later than 1944, however, so it is still historic. The existing structure of the street dates from 1951 to 1905, but they're not proposing any demolition of this structure. And the engineer's report estimates no major salvage of materials in any structures if renovated. And the property is in the next flood zone, so it doesn't require any elevation. We're recommending retaining building C and approval of demolition of all the buildings except the original house at the street. We also require staff review on site with the owner and contractor to determine the extent of material removal of buildings to remain.
Okay, thanks, Dennis.
You're welcome.
Julie or Russell, you're welcome to react to staff comments.
Thank you. I had a hard time hearing most of it. Unfortunately, I don't know whether it's me or what, but I think I got the gist of it. So if you don't mind, just repeating that last section. So I think what you said was that you recommend approval of demolition of every section except for C, which is that gable section, and obviously not the front house, which we're not asking for. And then staff review on site of how much of the material could be salvaged or not?
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yeah, and so just back to section C again, because I do think that that's where we all are sort of focused, as well we should. You know, the salvageable material there has been greatly diminished by the fact that stucco was applied to the building. The original roofing material is not there, at least on the west side. On the east side, we could see that the old wood shingle was underneath that roofing material, which has been replaced. And so I think, you know, again, I'm just reacting to what you're saying, but while I would love to save that little building, I just don't think there's a lot in there that can be used or saved. And maybe Russell might say something else to that as well.
Well, again, I just don't know that the time we do any sort of contemporary renovation that we'll have any true fabric remaining in the structure at the time the construction is done.
Mr. Chair, if I just clarify one thing about the staff comments, and then we might need to give the applicant an opportunity to react again.
Okay.
I didn't mention, but what is equally important to the remaining materials is the form of the building. You know, that's a big consideration when you're talking about demolition of historic structures. So that's something that we can account as well in our recommendation.
Okay. Julia, Russell, you're welcome to say something as to that clarification if you want.
Yeah, no, I understand completely what you're saying, and the form of that building is great, and it's just there's just nothing. I mean, the west side is corrugated metal. There isn't even any siding over there. We just really don't have a lot of material left. Is really the main issue that we're having.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to board discussion.
Okay, this is Julia Martin, and sometimes it's a mixed blessing when we have only limited purview over a property, because all we can do is either hold on to what's there or let it go and come what may. So that might have an effect on our judgments in this case. But I will say that when you're inside that little section C, which is definitely the only meaningful piece of this rambling addition, when you're inside there and you look up, the east side of the roof still retains its wood shakes, and the framing and even the fenestration, some of the framing around windows and doors appears to be still intact. And I mean, I do understand that in reality, there will be very little of the historic fabric remaining. I would tend to agree somewhat with Dennis that the form and just the typology of that little structure is really important, especially since we have no idea and no say over what might replace it. Also, Julie, we've seen before and after photos of your projects before, so you might be slightly handicapped by that.
Fillmore Wilson here. To sort of reiterate what Dennis said, we have sort of in a situation like this, two things to hang our hats on. One is the preservation of historic material. And I don't disagree with Mr. Rosen that there's a fair bit of historic material there, but in the process of renovating that building, most of it, you could leave a lot of it in situ, but you're going to put modern material next to it in order to establish a structure that's appropriate. And of course, the other thing we have to hang our hats on, if we can't hang it on preservation of historic material, is the historic form. And I think this is really what we hang our hats on here, is an attempt to preserve the historic form structure in light of the fact that I agree that there's not a lot of historic material that's ever going to begin in this building, but I think we can preserve the form. Thank you. That's it.
Anybody else?
I concur.
I can go ahead and try to make a motion if that's okay.
Go for it.
Okay, I will make a motion for approval of demolition of the requested components except for what we're calling Building C, and the condition that staff meet on site and review with the owner contractor the extent of material removal of those buildings to remain.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so Julie's made a motion for approval of demolition of all requested components other than Building C, with a board condition that staff meet on site to review the extent of the removed material. Did I capture that? Yes.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Fillmore Wilson, I'll second.
Seconded by Fillmore. Okay, I'm going to call the roll for the vote. Julia?
Yay in favor?
Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
Glenn?
Yay in favor.
Bill?
Yay in favor.
Chair votes yay in favor, so the motion carries unanimously. Next agenda item is 3 Legree Street.
Okay, this is a request for final approval for demolition of brick wall along the driveway, demolition of a portion of the wall and iron fence at the street for a new pedestrian gate and new garden hardscape. This is not rated in Charlestown, circa 1944 to 51 in the old and historic district. And here we see the location of the property on the Gree near Lamball. Next slide, please, Alex. Some existing photos of the property. Here's the wall in question alongside the driveway, and the fence to the right. You'll see another photo of that. Next slide, please, Alex. Looking south on the read. Next slide, please. And looking north on the grid, on your left. Next, please. And this is a historic image that shows that the same fence detail exists at 5 Legree, 1986. Please. And the Sanborn maps. Pretty self-explanatory, between 44 and 51. Next, please, Alex. And with that, we'll turn it over to the applicant for their presentation. If you could allow them to unmute themselves, please, Alex.
Okay, I've promoted Justin Rowland and Deidre Sunner. Let's see, and I think there's one more presenter. And the two of you can unmute yourselves.
All right. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. My name is Deandra Sunner, and I'm with Carolina Landscape, and we have Troy Barber and Justin Rowland from King and Society as well. I do apologize, there is construction going on next to me, so it is a little loud every once in a while. But so as we know, we're looking to demo a brick wall along the driveway and add in a pedestrian gate along the stucco and wrought iron fence that exists on Legree Street. What I'd like to call attention to with these two plats, the one on the left is from 1994, mostly accurate to what exists now. I'll have a more accurate plan after a further slide. The one on the right is from 1948, when it looks like 3 Legree and 5 Legree were one street or one house. You'll notice that it does indeed have a masonry wall look-alike along Legree Street, but if you notice on the driveway to the left, there is no brick wall. So we're not quite sure what year that wall against the driveway came up, but indeed the stucco and wrought iron fence are assumed to have been here based on this plat. Next slide, please. This is our existing site inventory as it stands today. Really, obviously there's some plant changes, but hardscapes, there's some raised beds and kind of a hodgepodge of materials going on here, but just to kind of show what's existing here today. Next slide, please. Just some existing site photos. We've already looked at a few. You can indeed tell that this is a historic fence. There is a difference in, I would say, craftsmanship between the fence along the street as compared to the the driveway fence. Although that one still looks historic as well. What I'd like to call attention to is the red square on the top right. That is the section of fence that we are proposing to remove, reuse, and turn into a pedestrian gate opening for this property. What's nice and clean about this is there are 2 supports right on this section of fence, so we would be able to take the existing fence that is to remain and attach it back into stucco columns, which I will talk about later. And in talking with Fraser Ironworks, they would be able to indeed reuse this fence and turn it into a pedestrian gate for us. So we're not losing all of the historic material that exists here. What also is nice is the location of this. We do not have to take down any trees. It kind of just fits perfectly centered with the house and goes right in between the trees that are existing there. Next slide. Here's just some photos of the condition of the fence. Obviously it has some age to it. We would be able to obviously fix some of this up. The bottom right is actually showing the section that we would like to take out. It's not even currently attached to the pole. And then the section or the photo to the bottom left is the existing stucco column that we would replicate in a smaller pedestrian scale if allowed. Next slide, please. These are just some photos, close-up photos of that wall along the driveway. As you can see, it does have cracks in it, kind of all scattered throughout. It has the odd concrete top. Really, we're hoping to have it removed for being able to access into the site that you can open car doors and whatnot. But just from a design standpoint, that it would feel more open into the landscape that we're proposing. Next slide. Other than that, other hardscape changes we're looking to do because of, proposing to remove that brick wall along the driveway and looking to add that pedestrian fence. We just would need some new circulation. So some of the existing bluestone brickwork would go away. This lawn down here, we'd like to raise it up so it's not sunken and wetter than the rest of the property. And then we would like to, on the top right, keep the structure of this raised patio, but refinish it with a bluestone. You'll notice to the left, there is a raised planter, and then there's the neighboring wall. We would like to just extend the patio and just finish it to be more modern and in character with the rest of the hardscapes we'd be using. But we would be keeping we'd be using the structure that's existing there, just refinishing it. Next, please. Here is our proposed hardscape plan. As you will notice, starting on Legree Street, the pedestrian gate that has been placed into these existing stucco and wrought iron wall. Have a nice brick landing, bluestone walkway, walking through the lawn. Again, keeping all the mature trees that are there, working with them. By removing that brick wall, you'd be allowed to, walk into the garden, not have to feel like you're just walking into the driveway to get to the main door. And then you will notice in the back that the bluestone patio has been expanded to the wall, the neighboring wall, versus having that cutout bed in there. All of this any of the new material would be, your regular full color bluestone and old Carolina brick. Next slide, please. this is just going back, showing the demo of the hardscapes that we're looking to do. Again, if you look to the right side, you can probably see there's a little rectangle there. That's the small section of fence we'd be looking to take out. There's some odds and end little hardscape items. As I said, it's kind of a hodgepodge of materials. So trying to, from a design standpoint, make it feel a little cohesive within the site. Next slide, please. Just a preview of the landscape plan. Nothing, very traditional Charleston. Anything red would be transplanted, but really just more of that, just sprucing up the understory of everything. Very, very typical plants that you would use down here. Next slide, please. Just to get into a little bit more detail of the fence, please ignore the pattern I have for the existing fence. That's just representative. What we would be, just to show that we would be able to reuse that section, turn it into a pedestrian gate. After talking with Chris Frazier, although I have on the bottom here us replicating where the existing stucco would have been, us replicating the gate fence, he would prefer to keep it. He had other ideas in mind of how to finish that bottom of the gate. He also mentioned it would not be an issue to figure out how to latch the gate, whether it was a locking device with a box or just a latch to keep it open. He would be able to accommodate both. As far as the stucco columns, they'd be a little bit smaller than the existing column, which is 6 foot 5 inches and about 20 inches wide. So I would be proposing 6 foot tall columns with that are 16 inches wide, just to be more in scale with the pedestrian entryway. And I believe that's it for me. I don't know.
Thank you, Deandra. Does any board member have a question?
I do. This is Julia Martin. I was just wondering, when you spoke with the craftsman, Frazier Ironworks, I think you said, can you just give us a little indication of how he was planning to restore, preserve the existing iron? It does look to be in pretty precarious condition in some locations.
He had mentioned that he would be able to come onto the site, take out that section, and again, it's a clean section since it has those supports, as you could see in some of those photos. He would then take it back to his shop and fix it into the gate. I guess I don't have more details than that, but he expressed there would be no issues in being able to still use that material and shorten it a little bit of it, because I think I'm proposing a 3 foot 9 inch gate, so it's a little bit of loss of material, yes, but we could still have.
Okay, I was more wondering about the rest of the fence. Is there a plan to restore it?
Yeah, if the client wished to do that, yes, he definitely could. He offered to be able to help fix the rest of the fence as well.
It's not part of the proposal, though, Julia.
Right.
I think the proposal, this is Dennis, I think the proposal is to only make the change to the gate and not do any renovations of the fence.
Correct, but he could if we desired.
This is Bill Huey. So you had mentioned that the depiction of the bottom panel of this proposed pedestrian gate. Right now, Frazier had a different idea. Is that something that you would be submitting as a shop drawing for approval, or how are we understanding what that's going to look like?
Yeah, I would follow up. We finalized that conversation today, so I would follow up with a shop drawing of what that would look like. I had, before talking with him and when I submitted this, I was just thinking we would match the driveway gate, but he had other ideas. So yes, I could follow up with that.
Okay, thank you. And just a quick note, I guess it could be just as well a question of staff, noting the section here in the lower right-hand corner of the page of the new pier. Is that an encroachment issue of any kind with that footer? I guess I just didn't know if it was proposed, would that not need to be any eccentric footing, or is there anything
I guess it depends on where the property line is.
Okay. Thank you.
It's hard to say at this point. Jay, I had a couple of questions whenever possible.
Okay, go ahead, Ms.
Is there any landscape lighting proposed?
No, there is not.
Okay. And the other question I had is, what is the 58-inch tall support structure? There's a note about a 58-inch tall support structure. Yeah.
Oh, that is just wrought. It's like wrought iron. There's nothing growing on it right now. I don't have a picture of what that. It's just like a hoop type situation. It's bare right now.
And you're proposing to remove that?
Correct.
Okay. But we don't know what it looks like or how old it is.
I think it was probably, when you look at it, it looks like it's more of like a homeowner's decision to put that in, not that it's supported with, that it's a structure with like a concrete base or anything like that. And I could send a follow-up photo of it.
Dennis, it's Glenn. I feel like it may have been visible in one of the site photos looking north, perhaps. Is that it down on the bottom right?
No, that is the arch that's along the driveway, which we would be keeping.
Okay, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Fillmore Wilson, I have a quick question. In the close-up photos of the ironwork, where you show one where the rail is detached from the post,
mm-hmm.
Is that the point that you would remove that section?
Yes, exactly. That is the actual one of the sides that we'd be looking at removing. It's not even.
And so does your masonry column go back in that location?
Yes.
Okay, so you would lose that post as well.
I would try potentially.
Okay.
But we could just, yeah.
Is there a corresponding post at the other end of the opening, or does the fence simply separated there and attached to the new masonry column?
No, currently there are two posts, and so it's that section that.
And so the masonry columns, just looking at the elevation drawing of
mm-hmm.
the new gate, it looks like the masonry columns replace those posts.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Bill Huey, I guess in follow-up to that question, Fillmore, that's a good point. Would then the adjacent panels remain in total whole, and then the new CMU piers would, the outer edge of the CMU piers proposed would be at the existing post locations? I just wanted to make sure that we're not also mentioning altering the panels immediately to the right and the left.
Correct. If we could, and if it looked nice to keep the posts, I guess, like next to the stucco columns, but I don't think that I don't know if that would look the best. So yes, it would be removal of that post, and then Chris Frazier had said that he could attach the existing fence to remain into the masonry columns.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll go to public comment. Alex, please.
We have one person signed up to speak, and I will allow April Wood to speak, and you can unmute yourself.
Hi, this is April Wood from Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed this application, and we have no objection to the proposed hardscape plans. The portion of the fence that is proposed to be removed for a pedestrian gate is historic. HCF is concerned about the loss of historic fabric, and we are opposed to this portion of the application. Thank you.
All right. Staff recommendation, Alex, or Dennis.
Alex, is that the only public comment?
Yes, one speaker and no letters.
Okay. Existing wall along the driveway is post 1948, dating from construction. Condition wall and presence of basement, EAR staff comfortable removal of this wall. On the fence, however, likely date to a late 19th century renovation of 5 Legree, as a similar wall and fence also extended across the frontage of 5 Legree per the 1973 survey card photo and photos in VAR file. So modifying the wall and fence to add a pedestrian gate would require the removal of historic fabric, including the coping wall, and may cause permanent damage to the ironwork that may render it unsalvageable for use as a gate, especially given the condition. This fence and masonry coping wall should be retained and preserved in situ rather than modified to accommodate a new pedestrian entry. The other hardscape modifications are acceptable to staff. We're recommending preliminary approval for the overall layout, including removal of the wall along the driveway, but denial of the modification to the wall and fence at the street. But if the board disagrees with recommendation of denial of the fence and the coping wall, there are some unanswered questions here about some of the details that we feel should come back to the board, or if not, it should be deferred and staff could take it from there.
Thank you, Dennis. Deandra, you're welcome to respond to public comment and the staff recommendation.
Sure. Are Justin and Troy, are either of them here?
Yes, I'm here. This is Justin Rowland. I'm the contractor. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm here. Listen to the whole presentation, and you know, a quick walk down Legree Street from 0 up into the 3 blocks up into the 30s of Legree Street. You have about 17 pedestrian gates and 9 doors that are ingress and egress doors that are, let's call them back a curb for ingress and egress out of the house. So if you notice how tight the driveway is with the existing wall, looking at this from a safety standpoint, that and I get the historic fabric in the wall. I've heard the whole presentation. You have cars parked in the driveway, and there's an emergency situation. You have a 50, 60, 70-year-old person trying to get out of that property through the vehicular gate. If they can open it, picking up the foot bolts and moving the gate, it's just not, it's not good egress or ingress. So that was our main concern, and our main reason for adding the pedestrian gate is better egress and ingress. So anyway, all things considered, we'd appreciate it if you guys would consider that as well.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to board discussion.
All right, I'll start. This is Julia Martin. And I agree with staff that there's no issue with removing that little wall, the masonry wall. And I also understand the comments about the importance of that iron fence and the coping wall. So I think if I were to lean toward approving that notion, like Dennis said, I would want there to be a lot of clear resolution of how the material was going to be handled and preserved and reused. But I do understand the desire to have a gate that a human being could walk through without having to squeeze past cars. And it's odd to me that this property was conceived that way when it was built. So I was gonna say I'm on the fence, but that's kind of funny.
I tend to agree with staff. I think I understand the need or the desire for a pedestrian gate. I'm just not sure this is the best way to achieve it. I think that there might be a more creative solution that wouldn't take out two existing posts, which is my biggest, which I think is one of my biggest concerns. I think there's probably a more sensitive design that could be worked out to create a pedestrian gate than what's been presented. So I have no issue with the rest of the plan, but I would not support the removal. At this point, with this design, I would not support the removal of the historic ironwork and its replacement with stucco piers and a gate.
Fillmore, Glenn Gardner speaking. Fillmore, I agree with you completely. I think that there definitely may very well be ways to put a gate into this coping wall and fence. But eliminating those two posts, I don't think is the proper way to do it. And to me, to consider the modification, there should be a preservation restoration plan in place for the balance of the fencing. I think that needs to be carefully thought through, and it needs to be a full application, for how to deal with the entire leg of fence. And in my book, and I know we're only commenting on what's given to us, but I think preserving a panel, if a panel were to be removed, preserving that panel or saving the panel, maybe using it for repairs elsewhere, something like that, you already have another driveway gate of a different design that in my book, perhaps a pedestrian gate could or should more echo the driveway gate there, let the fence be the age that it is and restore it, and perhaps not interrupt this with two new stucco piers. I think there's some other ways it could be handled. And at that point, I certainly think that the request for a pedestrian approach to the home is a fair and valid one.
Sorry, go ahead, Jay.
Well, no, I was going to pivot unless somebody has a different thought. How do you handle all this? I suppose you could approve everything other than the gate element, but the gate and the pathway leading beyond the gate sort of ties in with the whole site plan. And so that very well, depending on what they do with the gate. So do you have any thoughts on sort of how to handle it in terms of moving it?
Can I ask, have we lost Bill?
I think we just did. I double checked. I don't see him.
We need to wait until we get him back.
Can't blame his daughters this time. Dennis, sometimes it's really hard to understand you. I don't know if it's just me, but Julia O'Connor mentioned that too.
Yeah, it's my internet connection. I'm having trouble. The guy is here working on it now, but I'm connected via hotspot, and
gotcha.
the slides are progressing really slowly for me, so I know it's an internet issue. Okay. If it continues, Alex can read the comments. Let me see. I'll try to get a hold of Bill.
Hello.
Hey, Bill. You dropped off.
Yeah, I don't know why. I had a good signal on my Google, but now I'm rebooting. Anyway, I guess I can't vote, but I
No.
was agreeing with everything.
Okay, we'll proceed without you voting on this one.
Yeah, and I'll log in right now.
Okay. We can go ahead. Bill, just will recuse from this item
So
or
I was,
abstain from voting.
Okay.
this is Julia Martin, and I was going to suggest maybe we could consider preliminary approval for the overall layout, including the removal of the wall along the driveway, but deferral of the pedestrian gate for restudy and more detail on the preservation of the historic fence. Is that an acceptable move, Dennis?
In my experience, Julia, deferral should only be used if there are, minor modifications to things. If you're looking for a different design, it's better to deny and it's clear to people that they need to come back with something distinctly different, but that's entirely up to the board. Just my opinion.
So I get the impression myself that most of us are sort of open to the general idea of that happening. It's more the detailing and the preservation of the rest of the historic fabric that would remain. So I don't know, but if you think denial's cleaner without being overly discouraging, then we can do that.
I think in this case, you could do it either way.
Okay. Well, let me throw this out there. A motion for preliminary approval for the overall layout, including removal of wall along the driveway and deferral of the pedestrian gate for restudy and more detail on the preservation of the fence, historic fence.
Julia, can I ask for one clarification?
Sure.
I support the majority of that, but the walkway,
I'm just assuming that they wouldn't build a walkway to nowhere, but I can say deferral of pedestrian gate and related hardscape.
Yeah, I think we should, just so that we don't, give them a mixed answer, because if we were never to agree upon a proper gate,
right?
I
got you. So Jay, could I just amend that motion to add in deferral of pedestrian gate and related hardscape?
Okay, so Julie, you made a motion for preliminary approval of the overall layout, including removal of the wall along the driveway. However, deferral of the pedestrian gate and related hardscaping. Is that right?
Okay. For restudy.
Well, I think for restudy, yeah.
And more detail on the preservation of the historic fence.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
All right. So I'll call the roll. Does everybody understand the motion? Julia?
Yeah, you might want to restate it just because there have been changes.
Okay, so the motion made by Julia is preliminary approval of the overall layout, including removal of wall along the driveway, but deferral of the pedestrian gate and related hardscape for restudy and to provide more detail on preservation of the historic fence. Julie, is that your motion?
Yes.
Okay, Glenn, does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay, so it's been made and seconded it. I'll call the roll. Julia?
Aye in favor. Yay in favor, sorry.
Glenn?
Yay in favor.
Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
Bill's going to abstain on this one, and the chair votes yay in favor, so the motion carries 4-0.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. All right, so the next agenda item is 17, Labrie.
Okay, and this is a request for final approval for modification to garden hardscape to include replacement of ironwork at the entry, fencing, and gate, and new lighting. It's category 3 in Charlestown, circa 1797, 1840 in the old and historic district. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Next, please, Alex. Okay, so the overview here on the grade between Gibb and Trad, very deep property. Next. This is a view looking from Legree right at the house in question. Next, please. And then looking south on Legree with the house on the right. Next. I'm sure you're seeing it before I am, but I'm still seeing it. There we go. Looking north on Legree, and the property's on our left in the shot. Next, please. And the 1888 and 1902 sandbars show the evolution here. Next, please. A photo from the Low Country Digital Library on the left from 1886 of the house, and then the 1973 survey card. Next, please, Alice. And with that, we'll turn it over to the applicant for their presentation. If you can promote them and allow them to present.
I've promoted Cheryl Cave to panelist, and you can unmute yourself.
Okay. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. This is Cheryl Cave with Wordmer & Klein. We are proposing garden renovations to 17 Legree. This slide shows the existing site photos. The site is currently under construction with a new rear addition at the back near the pool, which was designed by Bow Clowney Architects. Next slide, please. These are photos of the existing entry sequence, existing stucco columns and wrought iron fencing. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. This is just showing the existing conditions of the site and the garden that is there presently. Next slide, please. This slide shows the proposed hardscape removals. The areas shaded in gray, solid gray, are materials that we're requesting to be removed. Mostly at the front of the street, it is the existing brick and tabby driveway. At the middle of the lot, that larger hatched area, that's just brick paving that will be reworked and reconfigured, and the same for the larger area towards the back of the property. That's existing brick paving that we're proposing to be reworked. Next slide, please. This is our overall site plan showing the improvements that we're proposing. We're requesting approvals for the site work details and modifications to complement the new addition and renovate the existing garden with materials historically used on this site. Our design intent was to keep the core of the garden intact while reworking the planting and hardscape as needed for to relate to the new architecture. The hardscape includes brick and tabby driveway, similar to what was existing, a new stucco wall on the north side near the driveway, resetting the existing Carolina brick paths, adding new stone terraces and modifying the front entry columns and new wrought iron gates and fencing. Next slide, please. These are our proposed masonry details showing the brick that we're proposing, which would be Old Carolina brick. Next slide, please. And these are stone paving details, which would be towards the rear of the property. Next slide, please. This is the proposed stucco wall that is on the north side of the property near the parking area. Next slide, please. And this elevation shows what we are proposing for the new entry sequence at LeGree Street. The existing stucco columns are 5'6", and we're proposing to raise them to 7'4", which is to match the existing column that's on the northeast side of the property, and that's that column on the right and that detail that's on the lower portion of this plan. So the fencing would be new with similar vocabulary to what is existing now. Next slide, please. These are our carpentry details and gate details. At the top left is a wood trash enclosure, which we had proposed near the drive court. The upper right detail is for a wood screening enclosure near the pool equipment, which would not, near the pool area, which would not be visible from the street. And then the lower right detail is for new pedestrian gates at the piazza. So when you enter from the front of the garden to the rear garden. Next slide, please. This is our planting plan. Next slide. Just plant list showing what we're inputting back in the garden. Next slide, please. And this is our landscape lighting diagram showing uplights in as circles, path lights shown diagrammatically as, squares are showing path lights, and then the triangles are tree mounted down lights, or in this condition, it's just half bell lights at the pedestrian gates. Next slide, please. And then these are the lighting specs for the fixtures used in the garden. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. That's all I have.
Thank you, Cheryl. Any questions from the board or staff?
I have Fillmore Wilson. I have one quick question. The existing columns are about 5 feet, except for the one on the far right. The column at the front on the far left, right? This one on the far left, which abuts 15 LeGree.
Mm-hmm.
That column is going from 5 feet to 7 feet.
Yes, roughly 5'6" to 7 feet, or 7 feet 4 inches.
That column abuts the masonry foundation of that house. As it climbs up, how are you going to isolate it from the wood siding?
So there's actually, I'm sorry.
I said that column currently is at a height that it abuts the masonry foundation,
mm-hmm.
15 LeGree. As it goes up, it's either, it's hard to tell from the photograph, it's either going to touch or be very, very close to the wood siding, the corner board and the wood siding on 15 LeGree. Do you have a detail to isolate that?
I don't have a detail to isolate that, but if in this slide of images, the second image shows there's like a masonry foundation on the adjacent house. So actually, as we get higher, I think we're going to have a little bit more room to clear that, and there'll be an air gap between our stucco cap and the siding.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty tight.
Yeah,
and difficult to maintain. I think an appropriate detail there to make sure that corner of that house is protected is pretty critical as that column goes up. So it's going to go up 18 inches or so on that. Really close to the siding and the corner board, I think, of 15.
Okay.
I have a couple of quick questions. One related to Fillmore's. Are you talking about the column that's sort of beige colored or the column that's white? yours is the white one, right, Cheryl?
So actually, oh yes, the white column is ours. The beige is connected to the adjacent house.
That's,
Okay.
yeah, that's
That's
Fillmore
the
Wilson. That's the
foundation.
foundation of 15.
But if you look in
Beige.
the image to the left, it appears that that column is proud of the wall, unless I'm misreading it. I
It
don't
may
know.
be, it is a little proud. My memory says that I think that condition is pretty tight.
Gotcha.
Tell from the,
All right, my other question for Cheryl was about the utility enclosure up toward the front of the property. The detail of it makes it appear wider than the plan of it does. The plan makes it look like the front face of it would just be doors and 2 posts. But when you look at the detail here, it looks like there's, you know, straight sections up to either side of the doors. Could you just clarify that?
Sure, that is, so that's a standard detail, just showing kind of the context of how a tongue and groove panel would meet a tongue and groove gate like that. But in our, for our plan, we would just have 2 gates and a post on each side flanking the gate. So there wouldn't be any panels that came out. Proud of that.
Thank you.
I had a couple of questions, if I could.
Please.
Cheryl, do you have any details of how the fence will be attached?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, no details of how the fence will be attached.
I don't have that in I don't have it detailed, but typically it would just be a return on the horizontal rails that would be screwed into the masonry columns with masonry screws.
Okay, a vertical leg that drops down, sort of.
Correct.
Okay. And the next question, has zoning approved the lanterns on the piers? Because zoning restricts the height of piers to 8 feet.
Okay.
And you're at 8 feet plus height of the lantern.
Okay, no, I wasn't aware.
You might want to check that with it.
Zoning.
Okay, and then the last question, where do the step lights occur?
We don't have any step lights on the plan. Oh, the middle detail on the top?
Yeah.
That is just a light at the pedestrian gate that's going to be to the left of the piazza. Right there.
Right in there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how's that mounted? Where is it?
I'm sorry?
How is it mounted? Where is it?
That would be mounted to the existing columns that are adjacent, that would be flanking that gate.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so if we have no more questions, Alex, can we go to public comment?
Yes, we have 1 person from the public signed up to speak. I'm allowing April Wood to speak, and you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. This is April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. Historic Charleston Foundation has reviewed this application for the modification of the garden hardscape and replacement of ironwork at the entry gate. We have no objections to the hardscape plans. We do have concerns about the replacement of the gate, as it does appear to be historic. Pending documentation from the applicant on the age of the gate, HCF is opposed to the replacement. Additionally, HCF has an easement on 15 Legree. We do not want any increased height of the proposed column to negatively impact our easement property in terms of maintenance or potential damage. Thank you.
Okay. Alex, I think we have no more public comments then, so we'll go to staff recommendation.
Okay, and let me know if you can't hear me, but existing coping wall and piers at the street date from 1989 per the BAR file. The proposed changes to the fence in Wall Street improve the proportions and are more consistent with the streetscape. The 2-foot brick wall at the drive court appears non-historic, and BAR staff is comfortable with its removal. Alex, can you go to a site plan? I think there's an enlarged plan of that driveway area there. Is there a large scale plan?
No, there's not
this is what we have.
a larger plan on that.
Can you zoom in on that a little bit, Alex? Great, thank you. Provide information about the electric gate operators, which should be out of view. With regard to the trash, and you can't see my mouse here, but relocate the trash enclosure to the east and shift the drive court to the west, and gates to the trash enclosure to the west side to open up toward the drive court. So we're basically saying, you know, mirror that trash enclosure to the other side of the drive court and slide the drive court over to the left to avoid, you know, the tree, and then have gates open into the drive court and not facing the street. Eliminate all uplights on all but grand trees. Uplighting of the live oaks at the rear of the property, however, is acceptable. The other hardscape modifications are acceptable, although any change to the right-of-way need to be approved by the city. You got that drive apron there. I think you're in the right-of-way. We're recommending final approval with staff conditions and final review by staff.
Okay. Cheryl, if you want to respond to any public or staff comments, you may.
Okay, sure. Alex, would you mind going to the overall site plan in the driveway area we were just looking at? So the proposed driveway is essentially the extent of it from LaGree Street towards the interior of the lot. That's almost exactly the same length as the existing driveway is now. So what we were hoping to do was not encroach too much more into the existing garden. Also at where the driveway meets that brick path that is central to the garden, there are 2 existing brick columns that we were hoping to retain. So if we shifted the driveway further west, we would have to demo those. So that was one concern we had when we were placing the driveway. As far as the trash enclosure is concerned, we can certainly flip it. You know, it would work per plan. What we were hoping to do was keep it out of the way of that large live oak that's at that front corner. And also we thought that we could provide a little bit more screening with planting sort of at the front side of the property where the wrought iron fencing is, since that is a little bit more transparent. And then the other item about the gate operators. So we would be coming in with new gate operators, and we would place those so that they were anchored on the horizontal members of the wrought iron fencing, so that they would be disguised as much as possible.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go to board discussion.
This is Bill. I concur with staff's comments, but I do, with the exception of the drive court, in light of the applicant's clarifying comments, I do believe those retention of those existing columns, configuration of the existing garden panels, etc., are should be retained. Otherwise, I'm in agreement with staff's comments and recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, can I just say one thing? I would ask the applicant if it's possible, if you mirror the trash, be in the drive area, or could the drive area get narrower to allow it to be on the east side of the drive without having to move the drive to the west?
Okay. And so we have the parking area. So the intent was that you would be able to come in and from Legree Street and park kind of facing north, and the 24 feet would be comfortable for 2 cars. So that was why we were considering that dimension, but we could probably narrow it some so that we can, if we did flip the trash enclosure, that we could get away from that live oak a little bit more.
Thank you.
May I jump in here? This is Julia with one more question for Cheryl. I think on the detail of that trash enclosure, it alluded to painting it the same color as the house. Would you consider it painting it a more recessive color to sort of blend in with the landscape? I think that the house is pretty light, right?
Right. I think since it's so far forward from the house that we wouldn't have any issue painting it a darker color, whether that's Charleston green or black, just so it really kind of fades into the plant material and the rest of the garden.
Okay. Well, so my only comments would be about the trash enclosure. I mean, I think you're going to see the front or the back of it, and I'm sure that the doors won't be left hanging open at this property. So I'm fine with either way, and a part of me likes it further from the street so that it is going to be shielded by landscape. And I have to make a comment about lighting. This is such a massive, expansive property, and I don't think the public would ever have any idea if some of those subtle, sophisticated light fixtures were located at the back of the property. And personally, I wouldn't mind some of them, you know, a modest amount of them being located on the long pedestrian pathway to the house. So
This is an issue of consistency, though, Julia.
yeah,
Because we
I know.
have denied other people, you know, the ability to do that, and so, you know, that's something that we face all the time. People come in and say, "You allowed it here, why can't I do it?" kind of thing, you know. And so we're just trying to be consistent and enforce, you know, the policies of the board.
But as far as I know, it's not a policy per se, and I know that it just gets ignored a lot of times. So I'm just voicing sort of a concern about that issue in general. I know that sometimes when we try to deny it, it just happens anyway, and it seems like it's worth considering a little evolution of our position on that issue in general. But I will not make Custer's last stand here.
Well, I would recommend, though, being more specific about which lights would be acceptable, just so we're clear on you know, what you're proposing.
Okay. I would love to get Glenn's take on that and anything else.
Is that a discussion for today or a board retreat, Julia?
I don't know, we got to make this call right now, I guess.
I will say that I understand the staff position in general and the need to be conservative with lighting so that things don't get carried away. But I do firmly believe it is a unique thing that's a case-by-case scenario to me, paired with the quality of the fixture that's recommended. There's a big difference in brass and copper, high-quality fixtures that disappear versus a homeowner installed lighting package from a hardware store. And so, you know, there may be a clarification from the applicant back to staff, perhaps with wattages and a little more info, because I'm with you. I agree. I know that we just have to be careful that it doesn't get carried away with, so that everybody does whatever lighting they want. I think a lot of it does kind of boil down to wattage and the amount of lighting overall, with high quality landscape fixtures versus a bunch of 100-watt spotlights.
Okay, I have one brief comment. I agree with staff in general on this, and I'm a little less concerned about the trash enclosure, I think, because I think it might be well screened. I still have concern about the potential impact of that column on the corner of 15. I think this plan is fine. I don't have any issue with the appearance, but I am concerned about the fact that there seems to be no detail to make sure that the elevation of that column doesn't have a negative impact on the historic material at 15. And I am sympathetic to Ms. Wood's concern about that as well.
Okay, so does anybody have any other more discussion? Sounds like we got to figure out sort of what to do with staff comment 5 and 6, and then perhaps add a board condition. But everybody seems to be fairly well aligned. Anybody feeling bold about floating a motion? There you go, Julia.
Sure. All right. I will make a motion for final approval with staff condition 4 and staff condition 7. And a board condition to clarify the condition at the pier adjacent to 15 Legree. And another board condition that the trash enclosure be painted a recessive color to blend with the landscape. And then something brilliant about the lights. I don't know, does anybody have any suggestions? Can I get any help here?
I'm trying to think how to appropriately word that, Julia, so that perhaps the wattage could be considered.
And a board condition. Good.
Typically, what's been done in the past is and some live oak trees if they're at the rear of the property, kind of thing. But generally, not letting palmetto trees and other species and having lights in trees, kind of thing. That's what's typically happened. But
I have a dangling motion out there. I'm sorry. Glenn, can you help me with the last part at all? I personally, I think the amount and type of fixtures that are proposed are reasonable. And personally, I would be okay if they just submit, which they might already have, and clarify the wattage, and if there's some maximum wattage that we would like to specify. I don't know.
Julia, I agree with you in that I think in this particular case on the property of this size, I think that their fixtures are, in my mind, appropriate and still subtle. And everything on there appears to be high quality. So my request would probably be that they get back to the city from their consultant a wattage diagram paired on the lighting plan. Perhaps they add the wattage equivalent, and I presume most of this is LED at this point. But they should add the wattage equivalent on that plan to make sure that Dennis doesn't think any of it is overkill.
Okay, and okay, Jay, if I may return to my motion and add a third board condition to provide a wattage plan to correspond to the lighting plan for staff review and final review by staff.
So just for my clarity, when we're reviewing this, you've approved all the lights that are shown, you're just asking for wattage, right?
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
Correct. I don't think they have any hanging tree lights or anything unusual.
I think she mentioned lights in the trees.
Did I miss something? I don't see any fixture related to that. Cheryl?
Yeah, may I speak?
Sure, please.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I misspoke before. We don't have any fixtures that are hanging from the trees.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so Julia, let me make sure I heard you correctly. You made a motion for final approval with staff conditions 4 and 7, and board conditions to clarify the condition of the southernmost pier to avoid an impact to 15 Legree. Board condition 2, to paint the trash enclosure a recessive color to blend with the landscape. And board condition 3, to provide a wattage diagram corresponding to the site plan that shows a wattage equivalent with final review by staff.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, is there a second to Julia's motion?
Second.
Second by Glenn. All right, I'll call the vote. So Julia's motion, Julia?
Aye in favor. Yay in favor.
Glenn?
I'm in favor.
Fillmore?
Nay, opposed.
Bill?
Yay in favor.
The chair votes yay in favor, so the motion carries 4-1. All right. The next agenda item would be 7 Council Street.
Okay, this is a request for final approval to elevate an existing house. It's not rated in Charlestown, circa 1902 to 44, Old Historic District. Next slide, please, Alex. Alex, why don't you go through these since these are going really slow for me.
Okay. Here's a context photo, aerial photo showing the site. Existing site photo from council. And Council Street looking north. And Council Street looking south. And the condition across the street. And the previous board motion was for conceptual approval with staff conditions 1 and 3, which was before the board January 11th, 2018. Board comments included agree with staff comment number 4, if new building would want transom above door at piazza, okay with conceptual. Another board member said important to keep historic windows intact. Reference piers under piazza, already changing it, so adding transom above door is okay. Another board member said, making effort to elevate minimal amount, concur with staff about brick piers, floor vents far removed as possible. Details should be worked out in next phase. Conceptual okay, but should come back to the board. If windows are original, they should not be changed.
How's it going?
To mute Dennis. If windows are original, they should not be changed. Piazza screen has to change. Maintain expression of brick piers. And I will promote the applicant. All right, there, Virginia, I've promoted you to a panelist and you can unmute yourself.
And is Hunter Dawson up as well, Alex?
Okay. Let's see.
Hunter's
Yes, I'll promote him as well.
A lot of this work.
Okay, Hunter, you are promoted and can unmute yourself.
Terrific. Okay, back in January 2018, we proposed raising the existing finished floor from 7 feet above mean sea level to 11 feet above. FEMA requires 13 plus the city's 1 foot. And in these 2.5 years later and continued flooding, the owner wants to raise it up to the FEMA level, which I can't very much. So we're going from 7 feet up to 14 feet, 7 feet higher. This means we have 3 more feet vertical of stairs in this scheme. All right, we're on CL1. This is the site plan. You'll notice the setback lines and you enter directly into the living room. There's no porch. Appears from the outside that there is one. Okay, next page, please. These are the existing drawings, and at the top, you'll see how the stairs come into, and we labeled it as an entry hall. I should have had the hall down by the powder room to the left a bit, because that's all living. But we would turn it into a bit of a hall with our proposal. Next slide, please. Front and back. Next slide. North and south. Notice that, sorry, back one, please. On the piazza, it's not a piazza, the first floor columns have those little strange brick bases on them, and that's what they were referring to in the comments last time. Next slide. Council Street elevations. They asked for us to draw it without the fence. And so at the top you have it without the fence there and then with the fence below. Next slide, please. This is the foundation plan. Nothing significant about this. Really, let's go to the next one. Again, we have what we proposed at the bottom and what we're proposing now at the top. Next slide. Okay, here you can tell that we have moved the house back 5 feet from the street and up. And with zoning, getting these stairs in here is obviously the issue. And in the back, that's the issue as well. So we've got 4 risers inside the house in the living room, and we created this wall to match that wall so that this becomes more of a hall, but this is just an 11-foot wide living room, so they will expand out and have sofa and stuff in here as well. Next slide. We didn't do anything on the second floor, so no changes there. Next slide. Okay, the conditions 1 and 3, we referenced the existing foundation elements The flood vents were moved to the rear. This elevation, with a significant elevation change, the articulation and fenestration are broken up. And then in condition 3, the water table level on the south and north elevation should be clarified and consistent. They aren't consistent in the existing, but we've made them consistent up in the air, which does look a lot better. And you can see that little weird thing at the bottom of the original first floor porch are gone. This window is more like the historic ones. And this addition is basically what was there, which is up in the air. We enclosed all of these, like that was open. We enclosed them in shutters, doors to match the shutters. That's about it there. Okay, next slide. Again, the vents are in the back. Next slide. The clarification of what these pilasters are like, just trying to reduce the scale of that wall and to allow vines or planting there. These are the stairs up, and those are the stairs in the back, but they're so far back that you really wouldn't be able to see them quite so clearly as it looks in this drawing. In the rear. Next slide. We're the first house within these 5 to go up to the 14 level, but there are others on the street. Next slide. We're keeping the existing construction details and adding the stucco piers and walls on the bottom. Next, please. And I think that's it. Next. All the neighbors are supporting it. I reached out to Historic Charleston and to Preservation Society, and not major concerns except that the stairs are there, and I tried to explain why we couldn't put more stairs inside the front of the house because of that living room being there. And thank you. Question?
Any board questions or staff questions?
I have 2. Virginia, could you explain in, I guess, the foundation plan, could you explain how the piers under the piazza are not aligned for some reason? I was just wondering what that was for.
The A100, I think. Oh, because the house isn't, it was added on 3 times.
I mean, just under the piazza. Alex, are you able to get to that plan?
It's A100.
You said that, yeah. Yeah, why under the piazza are those 3 central piers proud of the 2 at the end? I just was trying to figure that out.
Hunter, correct me if I'm wrong, that's the way that it is now.
Correct. That's the current situation.
Yeah.
It just bumps out. I don't quite know why.
Like I said, it was added on clearly at least 3 times and maybe 4. And I think that's when they moved that footing and the building.
But the columns above at the piazza are in alignment?
Well, if you look at, well, even on A102 or R100, it doesn't, that corner, you've got the 3 columns and then that weird corner and it recesses there to the north, the existing.
I think, Hunter, speaking to answer that question too, it has to do with the original, well, not original, but the brick piers that are currently there are what bump out. And
okay.
So we just followed that footprint.
Okay, so those 3 columns are actually proud of the
correct.
Okay.
There's a photo, Julia, where you can see that.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
Doesn't quite show it. But
Okay, I
we're
trust you.
following the existing building, yeah.
Okay. And my other question was, can you just explain the purpose or the need of the deck that's outside of the screen porch?
We've worked on this a good bit, Julia. The screen porch is the size of the old one, but this is the back. This is the only back door that's getting there. So if you're going in the back door and you're coming into your driveway, that's how you get into the kitchen. And that if we were to push the stairs all the way next to the screen porch, they'd have to enter from the rear of the property, which is, a full 15 more feet to walk, to go turn around and walk up the stairs. And that was the purpose of that. Did that answer it?
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions right now? If not, Alex, let's go to public comment.
We have one speaker. And I will allow Anna Catherine Carroll to speak, and you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society appreciates the applicant reaching out to us on this project. In light of the increased elevation proposed, we encourage studying opportunities to enhance and refine the detailing of the tall stucco foundation, and we would also encourage continued study of the rear deck that is rendered on the east elevation to ensure that no part of the deck is visible proud of the primary building plane from the right-of-way. Thank you.
Okay, Alex, we don't have any more public comment. Let's do staff recommendation.
Okay, and I'm not sure that thought about this, so I'll mention it, but noting that the applicant
Gone.
Looks like we lost him.
What was he gonna say, Alex?
I actually have it right here. So I guess I'll continue. Well, he's back maybe.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just going to mention, and then Alex, you can read the comments. It could be a variance, even if exceeding 50% value rule, and stay with their previous proposal. And we can assist with that process if that is preferred. Alex, why don't you go ahead and read the rest of the comments, because I'm afraid I'm going to cut out here.
Okay. The previous request was to elevate to finished floor 11 per the preliminary flood maps. This request is to elevate to finished floor 14 per the current flood maps. This changes the proportions and presents a new challenge of accommodating the entry stairs. This request also calls for the house to be set back an additional 5 feet. This changes the relationship to the streetscape and historic placement of the house on the site. However, setbacks on this street are inconsistent. Staff feels that this is acceptable to avoid a convoluted stair layout. The stair to the rear deck screen porch should be inset. Oh, I can go to this. Let me go to this.
Bring the comments up. Yeah.
I can read it. The stair to the new rear deck screen porch should be inset from the south facade as it was in the previous submission or relocated to the rear. The elevation to finished floor 14 results in the deck being elevated an additional 3 feet from the previous proposal, but the deck exists currently, albeit at a lower elevation. Eliminate the door and the foundation on the south elevation below the piazza. And staff is recommending preliminary approval, not enough detail information, with conditions and final review by staff. Provide details of all new conditions.
Okay. Thank you, Alex and Dennis. Virginia or Hunter, do you want to clarify any public comment or staff comments?
No, the rear stairs, clearly we prefer it this way, but that can be done the other way, just inconvenient.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to board discussion then.
This is Bill. I agree with staff's comments and recommendations, and I do appreciate the comments from the Preservation Society to whatever degree mentioning detailing of the stucco foundation. I believe that can be part of the final review by staff. So I agree with staff's comments and recommendation.
Fillmore here. I agree with Bill and staff.
Any other thoughts from the board?
I agree as well.
Okay, somebody want to offer up a motion?
I'll make a motion for preliminary approval with staff conditions noted and final review by staff.
Okay, simple enough. Fillmore's made a motion. Is there a second?
Second, Bill Huey.
Second by Bill. All right, I'll call the roll. Fillmore.
Yay. Approve.
In favor.
Whatever our appropriate language is there. A little brain malfunction.
Blame it on the computer. Bill.
Yay, in favor.
Julia.
Yay, in favor.
Glenn.
Yay, in favor.
Chair votes yay in favor. The motion passes unanimously.
I thank you all very much.
Thank you, guys. Okay, next agenda item is 95 Bogard.
Okay, 95 Bogard Street requesting conceptual approval for new construction of an addition. It's category 4 in Cannon-Borough, Elliott Borough, circa 1890s in the old city district. Next, please. Go ahead, Alex, because it's real slow for me.
Okay. Here's a context photo and aerial of the site near the corner of Bogard and Ashley. Existing site photo of the front. And showing the east side, unusual situation where a single house form has a piazza on the east side. And context photos looking east on Bogard and looking west on Bogard. And this is the 1985 survey card. It notes the house as a tenement house modeled on the single house form with a window door pattern of window, door, door, window, because there's no central hall. Sanborn maps from 1902 and 1944. I think this dates from, I think we said 1890s. And I will find that applicant and owner. All right, I've promoted the applicant to panelist, and you can unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. So this is, as Alex noted, an 1890s house that it appears to have been remodeled, I'm guessing in the 60s or 70s, judging by the extensive wood paneling on the inside and the what appears to be the vintage of windows in it. And as he also noted, it has a porch on the east side, which is unusual. And due to the shape of the lot, we don't have a backyard to expand into, and so we're asking for to use the side yard for a two-story addition. As he also noted, there was no interior hallway, so the interior of the home is completely obsolete functionally. That L-shaped addition may be unusual in downtown Charleston, but there are two other examples immediately to the right of this and at the corner of Ashley Avenue as well. And there are three more examples on the next block of Bogart Street. So I think the configuration of these lots, not being long and narrow like the traditional Charleston lots are, lends itself to that application. It's not deep enough to support 2 car spaces stacked anyway, so we're not losing any parking. You may note from the Sanborn maps as well, there was a structure in the 1944 drawing that was in the side yard also. The home currently is vinyl sided. It has asphalt siding under that, and what I hope will be good wood siding that we can expose under that. We spoke with staff on a couple of occasions, both back in January, more recently Kim Havlin, about suggestions, and we've tried to incorporate everything that they asked for, both in distinguishing the fenestration, the siding, maintaining a subordinate roof line, and moving the HVAC to the rear of the addition, all to differentiate the addition from the original structure. There is some urgency behind getting this through. I believe the new freeboard requirements take effect in July, and unlike your prior applicant, I'm not concerned about flooding on this property. And if we do have to raise it, it would create an interior step and problems aesthetically from the outside as well. And so Kim suggested that I request a staff final if I've done my homework well enough, but of course that's your call. I included a
I
lot
don't
of—
want to interrupt, but I think we lost one of our board members. I think we lost Glenn.
Alex, I had finished anyway. If you want to throw it back to the board when you get him back. I'm here to answer any questions though.
We can pause for a minute.
Well, let's give Glenn a minute to come online, and then I'll ask him if there's any board questions you have.
By the way, just a quick reminder or thought for you. If you're on mute and you press your space bar on your keyboard, it unmutes you, and then you can speak, and then you let it go, and it automatically mutes you back.
Cool.
Okay, there's Glenn.
And there's Glenn.
All right. Glenn, we need some volume. You're on mute. But is there any board questions of the applicant right now?
This is Julia. I just wanted to confirm, zoning wise, this is not in a short-term rental overlay, is it?
It is in a short-term overlay, but it is not zone commercial, so I cannot do short-term overlay or short-term rentals there.
And one more question, the new windows proposed on the south elevation, are those intended like to be for egress? I see they're bigger than the ones above.
We're following the existing window structure. So the original window, I believe, is the same. Although looking at it, I do see your point. It does look bigger. I'll
And
have
then-
to check with my draftsman. I can't answer that.
Gotcha. And then I wasn't even sure if, I don't think you have the 3-foot setback at that location, so I'm not sure you'll be able to add more windows. Just
Well, we, the 3-foot setback we had to establish for the addition, but you're correct. The existing building is 1 foot off the line.
all I had.
Okay, any other questions?
I did, if I may. Are all the windows proposed for replacement?
Yes, the windows are in abysmal shape.
Okay, and is the vinyl siding proposed to be removed?
The vinyl and the asphalt under it would be removed. The original wood siding would be exposed and repaired.
Okay, thank you.
Staff question to that. I'm looking at a drawing that references Boral shiplap. That's the addition only?
Correct, yeah.
Any other questions right now? Alex, do we have any public comment on this agenda item?
Yes, we have 2 speakers. I'll go to April Wood first.
Thank you. This is April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. Historic Charleston Foundation appreciates the effort of the applicant to rehabilitate this historic structure. However, the proposed L addition needs additional refinement before we will support it for conceptual approval. The addition needs to be further differentiated from the historic structures so that it will be clear that this addition is not part of the original house. With so little historic fabric remaining on this building, it will be important to keep what fabric remains. The columns closest to the addition appear to be cut in half to adjoin to the addition. It would be preferred if the columns could be retained as whole units and the addition added adjacent to the columns. HCF recommends deferral so that these issues can be addressed. Thank you.
Okay, and our next speaker is Anna Catherine Carroll. And you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society is generally comfortable with this approach given the unique lot constraints. However, we would ask that the addition be better differentiated from the main house, primarily by lowering the height of the roof. We feel this would be best achieved by foregoing the gable roof form for a flat or hipped roof. A successful example of this can be seen at 53 Logan Street, a gable roofed house which features an L-shaped addition with a parapet roof line. Thank you.
Okay, Alex or Dennis, staff comments, staff recommendations?
The proposed 2-story side addition is not subordinate in scale or mass and overwhelms the existing small single house form. A more sensitive 1-story side addition may be more appropriate considering the constraints of the lot. In addition to window light patterns and siding type and exposure, the trim and eave details on any new addition should be differentiated from the existing. Further enclosure of the 2nd-story piazza and modifications of 2 existing turn East Lake style posts into pilasters is not appropriate. Any replacement doors should be 6-panel solid wood rather than French doors or doors with lights. And fenestration changes on the west and south elevation would represent loss in historic fabric, and they may not be allowed by the building code. Retain the door on the 1st floor east elevation to maintain the window, door, window pattern, as this house is, quote, tenement patterned after a single house, unquote, per the survey card. The window and door positioning is original to the house. As part of the renovation, it would be positive, though not required, to add a door to the 2nd-story porch to reflect the quote tenement patterned after a single house unquote model per the survey card. Window replacements, if proposed and approved, should be 2/2 as noted in the 1986 survey card. Window replacement ultimately require review in the field with staff. Removing insect screening on the second floor of the piazza is positive. Provide the structural report for the chimney support at the next review. We're recommending denial for height, scale, and mass per staff comments and conceptual approval of the proposed changes to the existing house with conditions, and staff to review windows and other material replacement in the field with the contractor.
Okay, thanks, Dennis.
You're welcome.
Charlie, you're free to respond to staff comments or public comments as you like.
Well, I just kind of got hit over the head with all of that. I apologize. I thought I had discussed this with staff and didn't know I'd get 10 items in response. So I don't know what to say. That's a lot to digest. I'm not sure it's going to be worth it for me to pursue if I can only get one story out of it on the addition.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go to board discussion of 95 Pocono.
Okay, I'll start. I originally felt like the proposed massing, does have a precedent in this vicinity and could be acceptable maybe with some of the suggestions like what Historic Charleston Foundation recommended to further differentiate and possibly take away a little bit of the overall height and mass of the addition with a change to the roof line. But then, I see in the plan that the 2-story addition allows this tiny house to have basically 5 bedrooms. And so that sort of leads me to think that a 1-story addition might be perfectly reasonable. I do think losing the fireplace, in its original location is sad, but that is clearly outside of our purview. And I agree with staff on most everything they said, including the doors and illustration on the piazzas. I think it would be really nice and respectful to return them to their historic design and configuration. That's all I got.
Oh, this is Bill. I'm a little bit torn as to the addition. I do agree with staff's comments about the existing house wholeheartedly. As far as the addition goes, the comments regarding potential code issues, et cetera, definitely should be vetted. As far as the massing, I'm a bit torn. I definitely do, Julia, see your point about potentially an additional, extra room, if you will, in this tiny house, bedroom or whatever. But I do understand the point made by Preservation Society that there is some precedent to it, but with a much reduced mass form of a roof. I believe I would be open entertaining the idea of doing this with a much greatly reduced roof form evident. But there are a lot of things regarding the existing house that do need to be done in a very sensitive manner that I think need to be addressed. I believe staff's given a very good inventory of that. So I would just say that I agree with staff's recommendation definitely about the existing house, and I would be more likely to, in my view, look at it as a deferral of the addition pending a greater reduction of the presence of the addition in height and mass, which may or may not be achievable, but to the Preservation Society's point, there is some degree of example to borrow from.
I don't have anything very different from that to say. Bill and Julia, I think adding on to this building can certainly be appropriate, but I am wary of it turning into something much more than it ever was.
Okay. Shall I, this is Julia. I can just throw a motion out there for consideration. A motion for deferral for restudy of the addition and addressing staff comments 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10. And I'm sorry, I need to amend that. A deferral for restudy of addition to reduce its mass and further differentiate it, and to address staff comments 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10.
Are you excluding 3?
Well, if we're entertaining the idea of a 2-story addition, I think I am.
I'm thinking more about the columns.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And let's just change it into a board condition to preserve or to avoid splitting existing columns.
Julia Fillmore, if I am with almost everybody else, I think there may be a sensitive way to put a 2-story addition on this house. I don't, I don't think this is it. I think the eave line of that addition imposes too significantly on that little tiny house. And I struggle with the 2nd floor porch enclosure, but if that addition, if we could approve at some point a 2-story addition, if it didn't engage those columns, if it just didn't engage those columns, I think that would help, because it would help better define the original portion of the porch. And I could probably support deferral on that instead of denial, but I think it needs not to engage those columns.
Okay.
I agree with that point, Amelia. I think that's a positive point, Fillmore.
Well, I would be happy to amend that last bit of my motion, the board condition, to avoid engaging existing columns.
All right, so Julie's made a motion for deferral to restudy the addition to reduce mass and further differentiate from the primary structure, and to address staff comments 4 through 8 and 10. 2 board conditions to avoid splitting the existing columns and to avoid engaging the existing columns. Are those the same?
Yeah, you can just take the last part of that.
Yeah.
Eliminate the part about splitting.
Yeah, and a board condition to avoid engaging the existing columns with the addition. Does that sound right?
Correct.
Okay. Is there a second to Julie's motion?
I'll second. This is Bill.
All right. So Julie's made a motion. Bill has seconded it. I'll call the roll.
Jay, can I interrupt you for a moment?
Yeah.
One of the staff recommendations was for staff to review windows and other material replacement in the field of the existing structure with the contractor. Is that a consideration?
Dennis, I am assuming that this is coming back to us, and
okay,
that would definitely be a condition of any approval.
Okay.
in my mind.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll go back with Julia's originally proposed motion. I'll call the roll. Julia,
Oh, yay, in favor.
Bill,
Yay, in favor.
Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
Glenn.
Yay, in favor.
Chair votes yay in favor, so Julia's motion passes unanimously. Okay. Next agenda item is 34 Rose.
All right, this is a request for conceptual approval for new construction of a single-family residence in Kentboro, LARO, in the district. Next, please, Alex. And why don't you go through these, Alex?
This is a aerial photo of the site showing the empty lot at 34 Rose Lane. Another aerial view. This was previously at the board in February 27th of this year, where it received conceptual approval with staff conditions 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 9, 11, and 13, and board condition to lower secondary eave lines below the main gable and eliminate north dormer. Board comments included positive changes, simplify elements, small items to change to make more appropriate, pull eave down below main gable, eliminate dormer. Another board member, good direction, I think that's reconfigure massing.
Yeah.
Width, not entirely out of context. And another board member said adjustment can make it fit in. And I will promote the applicant. And Ashley, you can unmute yourself and turn on your camera if you'd like.
All right, thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right. I'm Ashley Jennings. I'm here tonight as the architect for 34 Rose Lane. We actually received conceptual approval at the last review and are asking for preliminary approval. I think there was the way it was printed was we were asking for conceptual approval. The comments that we had still had a lot to do with the scale of the building and the scale of the fenestration as it related to the street. So Alex, could you move forward to the comparison slides? I think probably the best one to do is the elevations. There you go, thank you. So you can see at the top, the center, and the bottom. The bottom is our proposal tonight. The center was the previous proposal. There was a lot of discussion about the scale still of the structure as it related to the street. And some of the comments had to do with the fenestration and some of them had to do with the eave height. I believe Julia Martin recommended that we lower the accessory elements of the building to put them below the eave height. But when we started to study the streetscape, we decided that we had a little bit of extra room and we lowered the eave height of the main structure instead of lowering the elements on the side. So that's what you see tonight is a simplification of fenestration, a lowering of the eave height of the main structure, the elimination of the dormer on the north side, the relocation of the mechanical units to the back of the building, a little bit more information about the materiality of the site plan, and I think that's it. But so now we can go back through the project. I wanted to first at least talk about the changes we've made. So this is the proposed site plan. We're proposing, as far as site elements go, to provide some planting areas in the front We've got a concrete apron with a gravel drive. Then as you move further back onto the site, there's a patio area that would be a concrete with a rock salt finish. And then the remainder of the site would be proposed as sod or planting. There's a small triangle of space between the stairwell that enters the front of the building and the sidewalk, and we would propose that that would be concrete to work with the sidewalk itself. Next slide. I think that the only thing that's really changed on the plans has to do with the fenestration. There was a larger window on the right-hand side of the street elevation, and there were some sliding element doors on the piazza side of the building that we've removed. We eliminated a dormer on the north side of the building. Next slide. This is the Rose Lane elevation. Really, the building is fairly similar to what was proposed previously in terms of materiality, with the exception of the larger window that was directly above the entry door. We're still showing a cornice element over the door to protect the door. There's a screen element that screens the piazza or the outdoor porch on the south side of the building. Next slide. And as you see that element come around the corner, the front corner of the building, and then you see the simpler doors on the first floor porch element. Next slide. This is the north elevation. It's been simplified as well. We've removed a dormer and removed some of the fenestration there as well. Next slide. And the rear elevation, you can see we shifted the HVAC over to be directly behind the building. And what you see on the porch is that screen element that's at the front. Next slide. This is just a section showing materiality and showing how the building relates. There's a area in the center of the building that looks down to the first floor. Next slide. This is a section looking the other way. Next slide. These are some building sections showing, wall sections showing materials. We're proposing a pressure treated lap siding with a 5-inch exposure. We're proposing a standing seam metal roof. The canopy element at the entry door has a flat seam metal roof. Next slide. These are the comparisons of the site plan. As you can see, between iteration 2 and iteration 3, there's not much difference other than some more information on the materials. Next slide. This is just a comparison of the floor plans. As you can see, the elevation, the evolution, once again, version 2, version 3, not much difference other than the fenestration. Next slide. And once again, elevations, the differences in the elevations. Next slide. Elevations once again. Next slide. And this is a streetscape just showing the building as proposed now in the streetscape. Once again, trying to lower that eave of the main building to bring it into scale, closer into scale with the streetscape. Does anybody have any questions?
Ashley, this is Bill. What kind of metal roof are you proposing? It says standing seam metal. Is that a snap seam or a hand crimp seam, or what is that?
That's a good question. I think that if we could successfully put a hand crimp seam metal roof there, we would.
You could, Ashley, you could do a galvalume hand crimp, 26 gauge galvalume, and hand crimp it.
Okay.
In this area.
And I did ask too, because of that really low pitch on those side portions.
Right. Yeah, the transition is important there.
Yeah, I think you'd almost be required to probably come up with a more of a hand seamed roof. I don't think that would probably take any other mechanical seam out of the equation at low pitch.
Right.
I have one question, Ashley, that I might have asked you before. Forgive me, but can you explain the reasoning behind that door on the north side?
I think that they wanted a side door to be able to handle trash, things like that. It's nice to have it.
Thank you.
You're muted, Jay.
I'm sorry, I didn't know I was on mute. Alex, is there any public comment?
No public comment for this one.
Okay. Staff recommendation.
Okay, so, you know, the previous board motion had a number of things that have not been adequately addressed, and I'll just go through the list here. Height scale and mass of the building is overwhelming on Rose Lane. Extraneous volumes not eliminated. Excessive fenestration on the north elevation has been minimally reduced. The door on the north elevation has not been eliminated. Gang windows on the north elevation have been separated, and secondary eaves have not been lowered to below the main gable. Windows on the second floor should be smaller than the first floor as mandated by the principals. Submit window specifications and cut sheets, and the height has been reduced by 1 foot. We're recommending deferral to address previous board motion and with staff conditions noted.
Okay. Ashley, you want to respond to staff recommendation or comments?
I would like to respond to those. I think that the intent with eliminating or moving the eave level down of the main structure rather than dropping the secondary eaves was to address the element that faces Rose Lane, the one that's most prominent on Rose Lane. So we did attempt to lower that mass to make a smaller building on the front. As far as excessive fenestration, we weren't aware that the paired windows were considered part of the excessive fenestration, nor the door on the north elevation. We were thinking about the larger window that was presented on the Rose Lane facade, the slider doors that we had on the lower level porch, and then the dormer window as being what was considered excessive fenestration at the last meeting. As far as windows on the second floor being smaller than the first floor, that doesn't seem to be a regular situation in this neighborhood. So we would ask that the board consider the same size windows on both floors. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. So let's go into board discussion. Let's lead us off.
Real quick, Alex, can you go to those elevations? You can go to the previous and current. Thank you.
You're muted, Bill, if you're talking. Not sure if you are. Okay.
I'm looking. I'm not talking. I'm looking. Sorry.
Okay. That's it.
Well, I can start if needed. I was going to thank the applicant for, this is Julia, by the way. I was going to thank the applicant for the summary that she provided on the cover sheet. That's really helpful for me when I'm reviewing these things. And I'll reiterate, I've probably said it before, but I appreciate the relatively modest program of this house and the focus on graciousness and natural light and a little bit of drama with that large opening in the second floor. I think, the north side door is quite a departure from tradition, but if it's approved, I would just think it'd be nice to pull that little canopy in so that it's not wrapping around the adjacent bay, so that it's tucked in that space. And I do feel like the evolution of this design, like Bill was looking at, I feel like it's definitely moved in a good direction. And I think at this point, in my mind, it's thoughtful without being a replica of something historic. But I think it can work well in the context. And to me, it's interesting and acceptable at this point.
Yeah, this is Bill. I agree with Julia. It doesn't. It says it's a new house, but it is sympathetic, which I think is something we were trying to look for in our previous comments. And I think a lot of effort has been made to address the comments. Yeah, the north door is a little bit odd. And I guess I should have asked real quick to maybe check out the site plan one more time. I don't know if there was a fence or anything over on that side. I can't tell. There's a looks like a planting bed, and I can't tell with that line if that just is a demarcation between lawn and planting bed there, if there may be a fence or something. I didn't know if the owner had a pet or something, a little side yard for something like that. And I'm not quite sure of the condition as far as adjacent to the property. Maybe I'd have to look at a street photo, but maybe a little gate or something there might help in that area. But otherwise, I think Ashley's done kind of what I was expecting and addressed the points, the concern that I had previously. I agree with Julia's comments to that.
I'm on board with what the two of you have said. Glenn Gardner, by the way, for that comment.
Glenn, can you repeat your comment? I didn't catch it.
I said I'm on board with the feedback from both you, Bill, and Julia. They definitely have, they have progressed a long way since the original application.
So Dennis or Alex, I thought I saw we gave them conceptual approval with conditions or comments back in February. So this is seeking preliminary. Okay.
Yes, this is preliminary.
This is seeking preliminary. Okay. Does anybody, Fillmore, unless you have any other thoughts, does anybody want to throw out a motion?
Fillmore, do you want to talk? Sorry.
Sorry, I was muted. No, I think I agree. I'm generally not crazy about windows molded really tight together, but this is a new house, and it's clearly a modern house and a modern design. So I'm having a less heartburn about the fenestration on the current design than I would on the other ones. And so I agree with staff in that I think it's a little massive for Rose Lane, but I don't know if but it's certainly not totally out of scale. So I think I'm in line with the rest of the board on this one.
I'd just like to ask other board members if anyone has strong feelings about the windows on the first floor being taller than the windows on the second floor. I mean, clearly at the north side bay, there's a kitchen there, and so those first floor windows are a good bit shorter than the ones above. But in general, like at the front elevation, do you guys have any strong feelings on that point?
If this were a more traditional design, yes, I think that the second floor windows should progress down, getting larger. But it's clearly a very contemporary design, and so I have a little less heartburn about it because of the nature of the design in general.
This is Bill. I agree, Fillmore, with your assessment there. And I did just note on this enlarged elevation we're looking at, it's listing the same kind of siding for both the extension of the bay here on the right and the main body of the house. Although it looks like the spacing is different. I guess I should have asked Ashley, is that the case, or is that just a graphic thing?
I think that's a graphic thing. I don't know why, but when these come into PDF, when they're presented at the BAR, they look different than the way they're drawn. But yeah, that wasn't the intent. The intention was for them to be the same.
Okay, but then that lower portion down there, that is different. It's labeled different as nickel gap siding, but the upper.
Exactly. Okay. Yes.
Thank you.
Actually, I just want to make sure that something isn't happening with the drawings. These are PDFs that you gave us. Are they different than what the PDFs you have?
They, I think if you go back, at least when I was viewing them before the meeting, some of the places that were filled ended up filling gray, and they don't look like that on my screen. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's, I think she's saying it's a translation problem on the program, and I have those problems with Revit sometimes. Some lines, anomaly lines show up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. Julia, I think you were getting ready to make a motion. Somebody was.
You think so?
I can feel it.
Okay, I will make a motion for preliminary approval with staff condition 3 and a board condition to trim the canopy at the door on the north side so that it doesn't project past the bay.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question of Julia?
Yes.
Julia, now, and I'm also now seeing those, I guess it's the water heaters or whatever that is over there on that north side as well. I don't know the site condition, but would you entertain the idea of maybe a gate or something over there? And maybe Ashley can clarify this. Is their gate warranted, or are we dealing with a gate in a void? I don't know that, but something to conceal those and maybe minimize the impact of that north door as well.
Sure. You're talking about the meters that are shown on that elevation?
Yeah, I'm sorry. The gas and electric meters, I guess is what it's called out as. I don't know where the water heaters go, but I guess, yeah, it is the gas and electric meters.
Sure. Let's add another staff condition.
And I'm sorry, Julia. Yeah, I guess maybe I should have asked Ashley, is a gate even possible over there?
It's something we can ask.
Okay, I'm sorry, Julia.
No, I think that's reasonable to have a board condition to include a fence and a gate to screen the north side utility elements.
It could also make the added benefit of a little bit of security for that north door as well.
Julia, do you envision it coming back or?
Yeah, I mean, oh, back to the board? No, final review by staff.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so if I heard all that, it was a motion for preliminary approval, staff comment 3. Board comment to trim the canopy on the door on the north side to not project past the bay, and to screen the north side utility meters with a fence and gate, and final review by staff.
And I will second whenever you call for it.
Okay. So Julie's made a motion. Bill has seconded it. I'll call the vote. Julia?
Yay in favor.
Bill?
Yay in favor.
Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
Yay in favor.
Chair votes yay in favor, so the motion carries unanimously.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next agenda item is 301 King Street.
I think we lost Dennis during Julia's motion. So I'll go ahead and introduce.
Ask for some lighting.
I know, I need someone to walk by. The light went out. I'll go ahead and introduce this one and we'll see if Dennis is able to join back in. So this is 301 King Street, a request for appeal of staff denial for painting of existing unpainted masonry walls limited to the Liberty Street and rear elevations. The structure is not rated, is in no designated neighborhood, and the portion of this building in question was built between 1944 and 51 and is in the old and historic district. Here's an aerial. It's the rear portion of 301 King. Here's a photo from Liberty Street. We're talking about these elevations here. And a photo from the kind of alley from the other side. Rear elevation. And this is Liberty Street looking towards King. And Liberty looking west. Sanborn maps from 1944 and 51 showing there was previously some houses here, and then 1951, the building in question. And I'll find the applicant. All right, I've promoted the applicant Matt Chambers and Rich Yesian, and you can unmute yourselves and turn on your cameras if you have one.
Thanks, guys. This is Rich Yesian. I am one of the owners of the building 301. And just kind of a quick background, we purchased in 2007-ish. I am a co-owner with 2 other partners of Blue Ion, which is that second story of the older structure. That top addition, which is a condo, that is mine, that we built in 2015. That's my residence. And on the ground floor, of course, is Apple. So just some background on that building. Alex, you did a great job of introducing it and showing the pictures. So the front part of this building, of the 2-story structure, is, you know, circa 1800s, whereas this rear part of this building, that is the one in question that we're looking to paint the brick of, is circa 1950s is when that was built. There is some question as to whether that brick is even original brick from 1950 I can't answer that, but there is some discussion that even that has been updated over the years and leading into, less historic brick. I don't think there is anything personally historic about the brick. You can see in this picture that's up right now that there is growth in the brick, and that is really the main purpose of why we are trying to paint it. We are actually trying to clean up the brick, repoint it, and seal it so that new growth doesn't continue to deteriorate the brick and bring down the structure of the building itself. You can also see on number 2 on that back portion, that is our entrance to Blue Ion, to our office, 2nd floor, as well as my condo. It was painted at one point, and that paint, which is a logo of Karish men's store, was 1980s, I believe. Also in the upper corner, which was on the previous slide, Alex, sorry, one more back. You can see the Ion. We did get BAR approval back when we renovated our space in 2007. We got approval to paint Blue Ion, our logo, on this brick. You can see that it's also faded pretty heavily at this point. So, our main purpose really is to clean up the brick, seal it so that it doesn't deteriorate the building. We also feel that the brick itself is not historic in nature. It's also off of King Street and in this back alley area off of Liberty, and it's been painted before. So there's also graffiti that is on several sides of this brick that we'd like to cover up. So aside from the original purpose, we felt like it would upgrade the look of the property itself and the area that it's in by painting it. And we can get to the rendering of that in a moment. Or you can go ahead and move forward if you'd like, Alex, to, I think there's a picture rendering of what we would expect from painting. So there you have it. We're proposing to paint it kind of a charcoal gray color. We are absolutely open to that discussion of the color choices. But I will also say that, the approval of the condo that's sitting on top, my condo and built in 2015, that obviously went to the BAR back then, 2013, I believe, to get approval, was overwhelmingly approved by BAR. Charleston Preservation Society and Historic Charleston all were on board with the design of the condo and the addition. One of the key things that they did, that someone said, either on the BAR, I believe it was on the BAR, said was the addition, the condo addition being a contemporary in design, was actually upgrading the overall aesthetics in that area, because there was nothing exemplary about the building itself and the surrounding buildings. And so they felt that contemporary design and new construction was actually improving all of that. So I guess in summary, the cleanup of the brick, the repainting, going over the old painting that is, doesn't look that great or historic at all, as well as just the area in general, feel like we would be updating the overall look. And Alex, is there one more slide forward? Yeah, so just another kind of view of what we would be expecting from cleaning up and painting that brick. I think that's pretty much it. Matt Chambers, who is from CMAR, is also on if he has anything else to add. He would be the contractor that would be involved in doing the painting.
Hey, how's everyone this evening? The only thing I would add is you have this contemporary structure on the roof sitting on top of an old warehouse structure. By cleaning up the brick and painting it, it seems that you would complement that structure more than it sits currently. Other than that, I mean, it's a pretty straightforward request. That's all I have.
All right, thank you guys. Questions of the board or staff?
Jay, yeah, this is Bill. Just a question of staff. All this other sort of signage painting, hearts after marks, and I assume, I guess just Cass's entrance, and I know I got the blue ion. When was all those other graphics? Do we have any record of when all that was done?
I don't think we know for sure. I don't think there was anything in the file that documented that.
Thank you.
This is Rich Yessian here. The only thing I can say, I might have mentioned it or glossed over it, but the Hart Schaffner, I forget how it's pronounced, but that is a Koresh logo, Karish logo from their men's store. And that was, from what I was told, I think almost a decade ago, was 1980s. And then of course, like I said, the blue ion logo addition in the top corner of the building was, approved and done 2007 when we renovated and moved in.
I have a question of the applicant. What paint system are you proposing to put on the brick?
We're looking at a Loxon primer and top coat for vapor permeability.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
This is Bill again. I have one question of staff. What's the vintage of this building, the old building?
(1944 to 50, 44 to 51).
Sorry, I was muted, Bill. 44 to 51.
Okay. Is that just like a hard wire cut brick, or the color is deceptive? It almost looks like that salmon brick from a little earlier than that.
No, I don't think it's wire cut.
All right, any other questions at the moment? We'll go to Alex, do you have any public comment?
Yes. We'll start with April Wood.
This is April Wood from Historic Charleston Foundation. Historic Charleston Foundation supports the city staff's denial of the application for painting existing unpainted masonry walls on the Liberty Street and rear elevations. Standard preservation practice dictates that changes to historic fabric should be reversible. Painting a previously unpainted brick surface is not reversible and will permanently alter the appearance of these elevations. From the images and from the presentation, it appears that there is a water infiltration issue at this building. These walls should be properly repointed and damaged bricks repaired or replaced where necessary. Painting the walls will not resolve the water infiltration problems, and it will make future repairs more difficult as problem areas will be obscured by the paint. I also wanted to say that the contrast between the new architecture and the old architecture is appealing and lends to the success of the condo addition at the top. we request the board to deny this application. Thank you.
Any other public comment, Alex?
One more. And I have allowed Anna Catherine Carroll to speak, and you can unmute yourself.
Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. We agree with the comments made by Historic Charleston Foundation and are also in support of city staff's position and are not in favor of this application. The existing patina of the exterior masonry walls allows the historic portion of the building to read of its time and should remain unpainted. This is supported by the Secretary of the Interior Standards, which recommends against applying paint or other coatings to masonry that has historically been unfinished to create a new appearance. We would also ask that the board deny this application. Thank you.
Alex, is that it for public comment?
That is it.
Okay, staff recommendations.
Okay, so staff denied a request to paint the exterior masonry walls on 417, noting, quote, historically unpainted brick is to remain unpainted, unquote, according to the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. Per the Sandmore maps, the portion of the structure in question was constructed between 44 and 51, making it historic. And the Secretary of Interior standards does not differentiate between more or less historic. Additionally, the rear elevation has remnants of previous painted signs that show the history and evolution of the building. And I believe the blue ion approval was by the former planning director and not BAR staff. And the building should be cleaned of graffiti instead, in accordance with the preservation briefs for removal of graffiti. So we're recommending denial of the appeal.
Okay, thank you, Dennis.
You're welcome.
Rich or Matt, you're welcome to respond to public comment or staff recommendation.
I don't really have much to say other than I guess I'm just confused as to when I'm looking out at King Street right now and seeing a ton of even older brick that has been painted, you know, I don't believe that those are original paints. That is brick that was painted probably more recently than, you know, than even that what we've been talking about. So.
Okay, thank you. So board discussion.
Okay, this is Julia Martin, and I will say that you know, the nice clean gray that you were considering is attractive, but I do agree with staff that the patina on those, staff and the preservation groups, that the patina on those walls really tells a story, and the monotone gray paint would erase that and possibly obscure the evolution of the site. Clearly the brick needs a lot of maintenance and graffiti removal. And I can imagine a specialty painter proposing some specific adjustments or improvements to the graphics that are there, but of a subtle nature.
Phil Moore Wilson here. I agree with staff. The building certainly needs to be cleaned. It can be sealed in an appropriate way that doesn't visually have an impact on the appearance of the brick. And it's, from looking at the photographs, it appears that only one wall had paint on it at any period, so the bulk of the building has remained unpainted. So I'm in agreement with staff.
Yeah, this is Bill. I do agree with staff's position, and a point made by Preservation Society. It's really the juxtaposition of the old to the new, and it really makes the Sky Residence stand out. What sort of monolithically painting it below, it just sort of looks like a base for the Sky Residence. and it sort of diminishes the historic character of the old part of the building. I do think, though, that the applicant should be given a lot of room to work with the issues occurring in the brick, and there should be a really good, thorough assessment of that, be that the mortar, and potentially some form of a ceiling, if appropriate, would be reviewed by staff. There are obviously ongoing maintenance things and issues that do need to be addressed on the building.
There's no other comments. I'll just note that in terms of consistency, I recall an application we ran into, it's probably been over a year now, up on Morrison, where there was no patina like this, and the building was about at the same age, and we came down the same way, which was to disallow the painting. So I feel like the way staff's recommending here, it's consistent with the way we handled that one. So I'd be inclined to agree with staff on this one too.
I'll add the only project I'm familiar with, at least that I personally worked on recently, that was a painted brick scenario, is where we actually took a building that had been painted with it's the Playhouse on Wolf Street that was painted with some form of a reflective silver paint when we got it, and my clients actually hand painted that building to look like brick again.
Is there any other board discussion? Okay, does anybody want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion for denial of appeal.
Okay, that's Fillmore. Is there a second to the motion?
Second, Julia.
Second by Julia. I don't denial of the appeal is the motion. Okay, I'll call the roll. Fillmore.
Yay in favor.
Julia.
Yay in favor.
Bill.
Yay in favor.
Glenn.
Yay in favor.
Chair votes yay in favor, so the motion carries unanimously. All right. The next agenda item is 27 Rutledge Boulevard.
Okay, and this is a request for final approval to replace panel of existing iron fence with stucco wall panel to match existing stucco piers and hardscape with swimming pool. Building is not rated in Charlestown, pre-1921 in the old and historic district. Next slide, please. So here it is at Rutledge and Gibbs. Go ahead, Alex, next. And a view directly from Rutledge, the front of the house. Next. And then a view from Gibbs Street. Next, please. And then looking south on Rutledge Boulevard. Next, please. And then the intersection of Rutledge and Gibbs looking north. Next, please. With that, I'll turn it over to the applicant for their presentation.
Hey, real quick, Dennis and Alex, is there a recusal on this one?
Yes, and I just put Glenn on hold, and he'll be recused for the next couple of items.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so Glenn is recused for this one, so it's just a 4-4. Got it. Thank you.
And I've promoted Elizabeth Pope to panelist, and you can unmute yourself.
Okay, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Alex. Can we move forward to the existing site plan? Thank you. This is Elizabeth Pope with Glenn Gardner's office. The owners of 27 Rutledge reached out to us to make modifications to their existing garden. This is the existing site plan. And let's move back now to the rendering. We are requesting approval for a new rear garden and swimming pool with a limestone terrace around the pool. Due to past flooding, we studied the existing coping wall height and decided to slightly elevate the pool terrace to avoid floodwater in the pool, but the surrounding plant beds will all remain at the existing grade adjacent to neighboring properties. We are requesting to replace the existing iron walkway with a wood gate for more privacy as this garden is on a corner lot with high visibility. The iron is not historic, and the stucco piers are CMU block with stucco finish. We would like to create a hidden bicycle area behind a stucco wall panel where we need to remove the existing fence to gain access for pool construction. The submitted plan shows a gate from that bicycle area out to the sidewalk, but we are currently exploring other options to have that area open only internally to the garden. A mix of existing and new plantings will make the garden far less visible from Rutledge Avenue. So this is our rendering, and if you can go now forward one. This is the existing site plan, and in the rear garden there is, it is only really a lawn and it's open to Rutledge at the moment. And the next slide shows our demolition and transplant plan of plant material. And the next slide is our layout plan showing how it would be built. And the next slide. This is a more detailed layout plan as we're asking to raise the pool terrace by about 10 inches. So it would be uniform steps up to it. And the plant beds would stay, at current grade. And the green is showing how we would, hold the terrace up. The next slide. These are getting into our masonry details of how it would be built. And the next slide are more masonry details. This is a detail of a proposed wall panel that would be on axis with the wooden gateway, the access from Rutledge Avenue, and the equipment for lighting and irrigation controls. We have planned for those to be on the back of it. The next slide. This is the existing stucco column and coping wall on the top with the fairly new ironwork, and the bottom photo or detail is what the proposed wall detail would look like. Next slide. This is our planting plan, and as you can see on the left side, we are keeping all of the existing Italian cypress, and on the bottom, the sidewalk side on Rutledge, it's showing the 3 large ligustrums staying there as well. And the next slide. Plant list, and I think, is there one more slide? These are the site photographs to familiar yourself with the site. And these pictures, the bottom 2 on the right, show the existing stucco painted gate and ironwork. And that is the gate on the bottom right that we are asking to be replaced with wood for more privacy. And the right of that would be where we would have the new, you can't see it in the photo on the bottom right, but that is where we would have the solid paneled wall. Yes, where you're pointing, exactly. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions for Elizabeth?
This is Bill.
Hey, Bill.
Can you, Alex, can you go back to the proposed landscape plan, just the colorized plan? Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'm seeing an answer to my question now. So I see the pool equipment screened by a hedge back there. That was my question. I thought I'd missed that previously. Thank you.
Any other questions? Alex, is there any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
Okay, how about staff recommendations?
Dennis, you're muted.
The existing stucco knee wall, piers, and iron fence date to post 1982 per the photos in the BAR file. Modification to these elements is acceptable. However, the location of a bike storage enclosure between the sidewalk and the porch is not a sensitive approach, as it obscures the porch and detrimentally modifies the fence. Relocate the bike storage enclosure further into the site to have less impact on the streetscape. Provide a permanent screen for the pool equipment and submit details. Provide details of any proposed landscape lighting if proposed. And the other hardscape modifications are acceptable, although any changes to the right-of-way need to be approved by the city. We're recommending final approval with staff conditions and final review by staff.
Okay, thanks, Dennis. Elizabeth, you want to say anything in response to staff recommendations?
We are already looking into having the bike storage location moved internally to the site. So that is totally doable. And then the screening the pool equipment hopefully would happen with the evergreen hedge.
Well, we were thinking, you know, the other sides needing to be screened from the neighbor's property.
Okay, we can do that as well.
Okay.
All right, thank you. So let's go to board discussion.
This is Bill. I think it's a nice plan. I do agree with staff's comments, and I would support staff's comments and recommendation.
This Fillmore, likewise.
All right, Julie, any other thoughts?
No, I agree. And I just thought of a late breaking question for Elizabeth. I'm just curious, I see the trash and recycling bins just in the driveway. Is that's just where they are now and that's how they deal with it,
Yes.
just sitting there?
Yeah, that is where they are now.
I don't have anything else to add.
Someone want to make a motion?
Okay, I'll make a motion for final approval with staff conditions and final review by staff.
Okay, Julie's made a motion. Is there a second?
This is Bill. I'll second.
Okay, I'm going to call the roll. Simple enough. Julia?
Yay in favor.
Bill?
Yay in favor.
Glenn is recused. Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
Chair votes yay in favor, so the motion passes unanimously. All right, next agenda item is 50 Lawrence.
And this is requesting final approval for new garden hardscape, swimming pool, and wood gate. It's a category 3 at Ansonboro, circa 1807 to 1808 in the Old and Historic District. Next, please. So this is the location here on Lawrence, east of Anson. Next, please. And there's a view of the property right there. And another view. And looking east on Lawrence. And then looking west. And a historic image of the 1973 inventory card, survey card. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the applicant for her presentation.
Thank you. Let's go through the photos to the existing site plan, please. And this is Elizabeth again with Glenn Gardner's office. This is the existing site plan of 50 Lawrence Street, and it shows how everything is on site right now. And I just want to point out the back left corner, so the north corner, it is a raised area currently, and the doors coming off the carriage house on the back meet grade at that level, and so does the brick building in the northwest corner. Yes, so that is raised about 3 steps currently. Okay, let's go to the rendered plan, please. Thank you. The owners of 50 Lawrence have requested to make some modifications to their existing garden. We are requesting for a new wood garden gate to visually terminate a very long driveway on the west side of the home. Behind the new wood gate, we are able to accommodate garbage and storage before reaching a new garden parterre and seating area as you progress toward the rear door and the carriage house. At the rear of the property, we are proposing a large swimming pool. Our client is a swimmer, and he determined the length of the pool, with a limestone surround and a covered open-air pavilion structure for shade. The pool and pavilion are both raised up 2 steps because this area is currently raised. There was a swimming pool in the rear previously, and the underground shell will be removed as part of our project. The front of the home will remain similar to existing, with a new or repaired marble entry threshold and a new brick walkway connecting to the brick driveway and new plantings. No changes are proposed for the existing garden walls or iron fencing and gates. The pavilion will be submitted separately, and the structure was previously reviewed by zoning for setbacks.
Elizabeth, if I
Yes.
could just, the covered structure is not part of this submission.
No,
right?
it's not.
Okay.
Okay. Does anybody have questions for Elizabeth right now?
Yeah, this is Bill. So Elizabeth, right now you had mentioned the rear of the property is raised. And it looks like the rear part of the building still communicates to a raised grade. Where are the steps? I'm just making sure I'm reading this right.
Let's go back to the first photos, and I can show you. Well, here they are. So here they are in the back, actually. This is the rear doors of the carriage house in the northeast property corner. And the photo before this shows where you step. This is looking south towards towards Lawrence Street with the carriage house on your left, and those are the steps down to the brick driveway where we can move. If we go forward.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was wondering in your new plan. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So that grade is raised in your new plan as well? All around the pool?
So the step up in this area is where at the stone terrace around the pool. So that is where you would step up.
Okay, but isn't it, what, 3 steps up existing? So in other words, I'm just trying to figure out, is the new level back here around the pool and everything all raised comparably to where the existing raised?
The steps are not full step height. They are like 2.5 inches a piece. So I think that will be looked at, but it will it will meet existing door thresholds.
So with perimeter, I see you have a perimeter planning edge. Are there any places where new raised elevations will communicate to existing perimeter brick walls?
No, not around the walls. No. Well, the only area.
The shed.
Yeah, to the right of the shed. Can we go forward to the existing site plan? That area is raised. So if you look in the bottom corner to the left, as we look at the screen, that is a brick wall coming off the shed.
You could zoom it, Alex. There you go.
And so that is a coping wall holding up those ligustrums that you see on the plan. And I believe, let me see. And then we're leaving room where we expand. If you go back to the proposed plan, there is a space behind the Chase lounges where we are not touching the house.
Okay, so basically, I guess getting around to my question, which I believe you're answering, is there's no location where there's a new raised grade adjacent to existing perimeter walls.
Yeah, correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Elizabeth, is there any landscaping lighting proposed?
If our clients want to do it, we or the landscape contractor or the lighting contractors will submit it for review.
Okay.
But they have not decided yet.
Any other questions? Is there public comment, Alex?
No public comment.
Okay, how about staff recommendation?
All right. The covered structure is not part of the submission, as we clarified. Submit details of this structure separately for review. The one-story deck and porch at the rear that is proposed for removal is not visible from the public right-of-way and not historic. Provide permanent screening for the existing HVAC unit at the south elevation beside the porch, or leave the existing screen wall in place. Confirm with zoning the allowable height of the iron arbors. Provide details of any proposed landscape lighting, if in fact any is proposed. And the other hardscape modifications are acceptable and minimally visible. With that, we're recommending final approval with conditions noted and final review by staff.
Is there some board discussion?
Elizabeth want to respond to any of that?
I'm sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. The only thing we didn't talk about was the new carpentry, what they look like, the details. And we do know that the archway will need to go to zoning to be reviewed by staff there.
Okay. Jump the gun. Board discussion.
This is Julia, and I think it's very nice, and I think staff's comments make sense. So I have nothing to add.
Yeah, this is Bill. I agree, and obviously the current landscape plan's obsolete with the stump that now the whole thing was designed around, I guess, a tree at one point. It's now a stump, so it's a well-conceived plan. And I agree with staff's comments.
Yeah, I agree with staff.
Okay, anybody got a motion? Fillmore, you were getting ready to make a motion, weren't you?
Yeah, somebody, yeah.
Attaboy, Jay.
Okay, I'll make a motion for final approval with staff conditions noted and final review by staff.
All right, Fillmore's made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Julia. All right, I'm gonna call the roll. It's easy enough. Fillmore.
Aye, in favor.
Julia.
Yay in favor?
Bill.
Yay in favor.
Chair votes yay in favor. Motion passes unanimously. All right, next agenda item is 114 Trad Street.
Okay, and they're requesting final approval for removal of an existing hardscape with salvage of brick, new stone, and brick hardscape, blue stone coping at the pool, wood gate and garbage enclosure, and removal of selected ground level railing for access to the piazza. This is a category 3 in Charlestown pre-1888 and the old and historic district. Next, please, Alex. So here we are on Trad between Legree and Orange. Go ahead. Looking directly at the house to the right there. Go ahead, Alex. And then some existing site photos. You see the unusual condition of the piazza on the ground floor. Go ahead, Alex. The intersection of Legree and Trad looking east from the Alamo there. Go ahead, Alex. And then inspection of Legree and Trad, intersection of Legree and Trad looking west. And the 73 inventory card. So we know that change to the piazza occurred before 73. And then the Phoenix fire insurance map of August 2nd, my birthday, 1788, not my birthday. Next. Sandbar maps from 1888 and 1902 that show some evolution for some of the dependencies. Go ahead, Alex. And then with that, I'll turn it over to the applicant for their presentation.
I'm sorry to interrupt very quickly.
Yes.
Mr. Dowd, I'm sorry. I should have, I didn't recognize the address. Am I able to recuse myself? Is there still enough of a quorum to vote on this?
Yes.
I'll need to recuse myself from this application.
Thank you.
Bill, I'll put you on hold.
Bye, Bill.
Can y'all hear me now?
Yes, we can, Elizabeth.
Sorry, I got kicked off. Okay, so are y'all ready for me, or where did I lose you?
No, we're ready for you. Did you say you got kicked off or ticked off?
No, kicked off. It just
kicked off.
Just ended me from the meeting. So this, can we move forward to the existing plan, please? This is the existing garden that our clients at 114 Trad Street have asked us to help them make some modifications. So this is the existing site as it is right now. And now if we move forward to these are the site photos. I don't know if y'all showed any, as I was missing. So this is the existing site as it looks at the moment. And now let's go forward to the rendering. Thank you. We are requesting approval for a new rear garden with brick and stone hardscape, including a dining patio and a stone surround for a small dipping pool. We are proposing a wood fence and garbage enclosure at the end of the driveway to serve as the entry to the new garden area and to keep the owner's dog safely in the garden. At the same time, we will make underground drainage improvements to remove water from the foundation of the house. We are also requesting removal of some non-original ground level piazza rails. The house was constructed in 1770, and the ground level of the piazza was extensively modified and shifted about 2 feet inward, we believe, in the 1960s, with the second floor piazza remaining cantilevered overhead in its original location. Removal of this non-historic fabric would allow much improved access to the piazza, which is only 1 step off the ground, and it would allow the owners to use the driveway by being able to park and open one door to access their car, which is currently not possible as the driveway is 8 feet wide. There's a small amount of historic brick paving in the rear garden area, and we plan to salvage and reuse the good brick and the circular medallion. So this, as you're looking, is the garden plan, the proposed garden plan for the 114 Trad.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I received an email from the owner talking about the sort of the rationale for removing the railings. Can you speak to that, or should I read this? I just want to make sure, I mean, it was addressed to me, so I just want to make sure the board understands that point.
I'm happy for you to read it.
Okay. So the owner writes that they've carefully thought through, thought through the request for the railing removal on the ground floor after walking the neighborhood and seeing other homes sitting low to the ground with no first floor railing. We have only one step from the wood piazza to the ground level. In fact, the wood skirt board around the piazza sits in the adjacent soil. The reason for the request is so we can actually use our existing driveway and open one door of the car to get out. Currently, our painter exits his van through its rear door because the driveway is too narrow to open a side car door. The door hits the railing. We don't take lightly the request for an architectural change, but do so with the knowledge that our piazza was significantly altered in the past for the driveway's installation. The first floor was recessed approximately 24 inches inward, so the second floor piazza now cantilevers over the first for the entire driveway. Though we cannot find the exact date of the modification, the existing crab orchard stone in the driveway was used extensively in Charleston in the 1960s, 70s, so we believe this is a fairly recent change. The rails and pickets are not at all indicative of the style for our 18th century house, and most pickets appear to be modern replacements. After having had a car stolen recently from Trad Street, realizing that street parking can become tight, we'd like the ability to get one or both of our cars off the street, and hope the board will consider the reasons for a seemingly somewhat unique request. Okay, so that was the owner presentation. Is there any board questions? No? Okay. Is there any public comment, Alex?
Yes, we have 2 speakers. I'll allow April Wood to speak first.
This is April Wood from Historic Charleston Foundation. The Historic Charleston Foundation has reviewed this application and has no objection to the hardscape changes. However, we are concerned about the removal of the ground store piazza level piazza railing as proposed. The piazza railing is a character defining feature of the piazza and should be retained. If the BIR agrees to allow the removal of some of the railing sections, the first 2 bays closest to the street should be retained to maintain the appearance of the piazza. Thank you.
And our next speaker is Anna Catherine Carroll, and you can unmute yourself.
Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. While the Preservation Society appreciates the rationale explained by the owner and the applicant, we do have concerns with the level of demolition proposed at the first floor piazza railing. While this piazza has been subject to unfortunate alterations, we feel that maintaining the piazza's traditional form to the greatest extent possible is important. Further, the selective removal of railing as proposed would result in an atypical and awkward configuration at the ground level. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Dennis or Alex, how about staff recommendation?
Okay, the existing railing on the first floor piazza should be retained, even if it is not historic material, as it represents an element of the single house form and is character defining. Provide details of the iron trellis, provide details of window boxes and how they are attached to the facade to avoid damage to historic material. Provide details of any proposed landscape lighting, if any, in fact, is proposed. And the other hardscape modifications are acceptable and minimally visible. So we're recommending final approval with staff conditions and final review by staff, with the exception of the removal of the piazza balustrade, which should remain.
Okay, Elizabeth, you're welcome to respond to any or all of that.
Okay, we understand the comment on the wood rails, and should the board deny the request, we would love the opportunity to meet on site to review the rails and look at the situation. So if that can be taken into consideration, if they are denied, that would be very much appreciated.
Are you asking for the board to do that?
We're just asking if it is denied, can we have the opportunity to look at it on site with either staff or with the board together?
Okay, board discussion.
I think it's a nice design again. This is Julia Martin. And regarding the railing and the applicant's request there, it almost seems like if we're heading toward staff's comment about, retaining all of that and they want to meet on site, maybe that particular part of the application should be deferred before it gets denied. I don't know. Those are my thoughts.
Bill, you're on mute.
Little indicator goes away and I don't realize I'm on mute. Question of staff, the modification, that unfortunate modification to the piazza was made when?
Prior to 44?
Yeah, it was, I couldn't remember.
It appears on the 73.
73 survey, so
Okay.
at least pre-73.
Yeah, pre-73.
Yeah.
Julia, I think if the board's willing to sort of hear them out, if you will, or staff, if the DNR is willing to hear them out on site, I think you got the right approach. It seems like there's enough going on in the history of that piazza where we should at least say, okay, maybe there's something unique some condition that would show up on site, that would make us at least consider it, as opposed to drawing a hard line.
I think we should ask what that condition might be. And I feel like the board ought to make a decision about it, or, agree to go out there and look at it and not leave it for us to have to negotiate with the applicant.
Okay. Elizabeth, what would you show us? What's sort of the rationale behind the reasons?
Well, as the second speaker said, she would propose keeping the front rails, keeping those and being okay with the other ones getting removed for access. And I think that is something to look at, because we understand the historical significance of the building, but we also want the people that live there to be able to use it and want to, bring it back to life and really change it and enjoy it. And I think seeing, the painter get stuck in the car and have to pop himself out the rear hatchback of a van, it makes it, I think, an unusual situation. And I think it is already a unique situation that the piazza was shortened for the driveway, and that the second floor piazza is 2 feet, over the driveway and overhanging it. So I think it's a unique situation, and I know there are more, but I think it's just worth looking at.
Okay.
And if I can say to the board that I think that what we're talking about here is removing sections of railings to allow, egress and ingress to vehicles. I don't know that we need to go there to, assess that. It's clearly tight. And I think we need to decide, is preservation of the balustrade more important than, access to and from the cars, or can that, does that take priority without actually having to take a site visit, I believe.
I agree, Dennis. I think it's all pretty evident from the photographs. And I am not sure which way I'm leaning. I'm curious to hear what other board members think.
You know, I think I'm leaning Julia. I used to live, I rented a house down here, and I remember that driveway being significantly tighter than most. So I think I'm leaning towards finding one of the balustrades to remove to the limited extent possible to access, you know, a wider vehicle like that. So maybe not as much as proposed, but and I don't know whether you do it in the front or the back, but finding one perhaps.
And I don't know if this helps, but the ones are not shown on the back of the porch facing the garden because they are not there. So where the grill is, that porch does not have any railings.
This is Julia again. I am reflecting on Historic Charleston Foundation's comment that they could be comfortable with the first two sections of railing remaining.
You go to the elevation, Alex.
To which?
The elevation, existing or proposed,
photo?
either. Yeah. No, the drawing.
I don't think we have an elevation photo.
Oh, we don't.
We have photos.
Or elevation drawing. We have this.
I thought there was a drawing that showed. I guess it was the plan drawing that showed the extent of removal proposed. Yeah.
I'm looking at some listing photographs online, which are really helpful. So, yeah.
So right now, Elizabeth, there's 3 sections proposed to be removed. Am I seeing that?
Yes.
Okay.
2 full sections, and then the section in the center is not a full section. It has an opening in it right now.
Would it work if just the center section with the opening were removed?
That's what I was looking at, Dennis. I mean, it seems like you want to keep a couple of sections closer to the street. And that the one in the middle seems more logical than the others.
I think the one in the middle is logical as it's a tight space. Currently, it's a really tight, looks like it was filled in or cut, you know, for someone to access the driveway when the driveway was put in. I think it would be really useful to have the center one gone and the next one, and keep the first 2 and the last section, I think would be really great, or, you know, make it easy for them to use the space.
The funny thing about that is to have just one section of balustrade at the rear there, you know, one short section. Strange.
Well, that is though where we are proposing, that is where the garden entrance is. And so you would not see that end of the piazza from the driveway.
No, I'm talking about the bay in front of that.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Dennis, and it looks to me like you couldn't really take advantage of opening corridors at that, let's call it the 4th bay.
Yeah.
Anyway, the center bay seems like a really good candidate for a little compromise. So I'm just gonna throw out a motion, see what happens. For final approval with staff conditions and final review by staff, with the exception of the removal of the piazza balustrade, except for the center portion. So
That's like a double negative, isn't it?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, so here, I think you were saying final review of staff conditions noted and final review by staff. Let's see here, maybe we can, well.
All right. Final approval with staff conditions 2, 3, 7, and 4. I don't know why they're called that.
I don't either.
And final review by staff and board condition or board approval. I'm sorry, I'm losing it.
Yeah.
And
board conditions to allow only this. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. To allow only the removal of the center bay of railing.
All right. So Julia made a motion for final approval with staff conditions 2, 3, 7, and 4 noted. Final review by staff and a board condition to only permit the removal of the center bay of the railing balustrades.
Thank you.
All right. Well, this could get interesting. Is there a second?
Chair can second, by the way.
All right. So hearing no second, I am going to make a second. So I'll second that motion, Julia. So let's vote on it then. All right. I'll call the roll. Julia.
Yay in favor.
Fillmore.
Yay in favor.
The chair votes yay in favor. Okay, so it is unanimously approved.
Now I'm going to recuse myself.
Okay, let's get everybody back and say goodbye to Julia.
Good night, Julia.
Okay, y'all broke out. So am I good?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, you're good.
I lost y'all when y'all voted. So what was the decision?
You got what you wanted and only the middle bay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
24 Humphrey Court.
Okay, requesting final approval for new construction of single-family affordable housing in Canterbury, Elliottboro, and the Old City District. Next, please. So here we are in Humphreys Court, which is a very narrow court off of Rutledge. Next, please. An existing site photo of the location of the site. Go ahead, Alex. And with that, I'll turn it over to the applicant for their presentation. Go ahead, Aaron. If Alex. Alex, is she?
I thought I just promoted her, but I don't see her now. Okay, here she is.
There she is.
Good. For a second, I thought I booted her out.
You can unmute yourself, Aaron. There you go.
All right, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Good evening, board members. Erin Lanier with Julia Martin Architects. Here tonight requesting final approval for a new single-family residence that will be an affordable house constructed by the Episcopal Diocese Community Housing Authority. And then for a little background, the Housing Authority actually owns 2 vacant lots on Humphrey Court, numbers 24 and 28, and you've reviewed designs for houses there before, but for various reasons they decided to go in a different direction. And the design we're proposing tonight is actually in a similar height, scale, and mass to what was previously approved. So we took the liberty of going ahead and providing a full set with details as well. Next slide, please. This is a survey of our lot, and you'll notice that we are dealing with two fairly restricted utility company easements at the front and the rear, which gets even weirder at number 28. So that's impacting our siding and overall plan somewhat. Luckily, we are in an X zone here, so height isn't as much of a concern as it can be with new construction. Next slide, please. These are some context images. 24 and 28 are the two vacant lots in the upper right-hand corner. And generally, this area has an eclectic mix of historic single houses, freedmen's cottages, mid-century infill, as well as more recent new construction. This lot faces the north end of Quarters Court, which is largely two-story residences, as is the north side of Humphrey Court, and then the south side has a series of one-story cottages. Next slide, please. According to the Sanborn maps, there have been no residential structures on this lot for at least 100 years, so our design isn't inspired by anything that was here, but you'll see it does attempt to reference the traditional wood frame vernacular and character typical of this neighborhood. Our proposed site plan is on the right, and again, because of those easements, we're pushed back on the lot in sort of an atypical way, but the trade-off is a compact footprint that allows for a really generous amount of green space. Next slide, please. This is the first and second floor plan. It's a fairly modest two-bedroom house, and we've moved away from the typical single house layout of the earlier design, but it's really an efficient plan that provides a simple but we think interesting massing at the exterior. Next slide, please. We're proposing a gable roof of architectural shingle at the main volume and then a low slope hip at the minor volume. Next slide. And then moving to the exterior, we have a two-story, three-bay main volume with a secondary minor volume on the west side. Not too dissimilar to the traditional single house form, but pulling the entry a little further back, we're able to break down the mass and also clearly read as something more contemporary. Materials are a 4-inch exposure cementitious lap siding, 2/2 aluminum clad STL windows with grills at the exterior and spacer bar in between the glass. And then of course, because of our elevation here, we have a relatively minimal foundation with just a traditional 3-coat smooth stucco finish. In terms of colors, we're kind of imagining a light base color on the siding of the main volume, but then a single strong trim color like a terracotta red or something that would be used at all the trim, fascia, window sashes, and then also the minor volume siding to just provide a nice contrast throughout. Next slide, please. These are our proposed streetscapes, which again have a lot of variety already, but we're certainly in keeping with the other two-story buildings, which are the majority on this street. Next slide. And then we have our final details here at the end, which I won't go through in detail, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And that is all I have.
Okay, does anybody have questions for Aaron right now? All right, so Alex, is there any public comment? I have a letter right here.
All we have is that letter.
Okay, I'll read it. Scott Watson of 17 Humphrey Court writes that his family resides at 17 Humphrey Court, and a house was originally approved and constructed in 2013 with a subsequent addition completed in 2019. We're fully supportive of the proposed project and the potential future sister house on the adjacent parcel presented by Ms. Martin on behalf of the Episcopal Diocese Community Housing Development Organization. The design is respectful of the scale of other residences on the court, as well considered in its detail and specification of materials, and when completed will further advance the potential to create a logical and pleasing streetscape, Humphrey Court, more fully connecting to Porter's Court. It also, unlike some projects approved in recent years on Porter's Court, provides for off-street parking for the future residents and respects reasonable setbacks and height limits. We very much feel this building would be a great addition to our neighborhood, and we strongly support the application presently before the BARS. So, Alex, how about staff recommendation?
Okay, height, scale, and mass are acceptable for the streetscape. The proportions are horizontal with the 3-bay front facade, but not overly objectionable. The geometry of the enclosure is better on the west side than the previous iteration. You know, our first instinct is to say that we'd like to see 2 bays of windows versus 3, but we understand the need for a window in the bathroom, so we're okay with it. We're recommending final approval and ask that the applicant submit the color palette for staff review.
Okay. Aaron, do you want to react to public comment or staff comments?
No, thank you.
All right. Is there any board discussion?
This is Bill. I agree with staff's comments and recommendation.
So you're
Glenn, I do as well.
Fillmore. Okay. Glenn, you want to make a motion?
Are you able to scroll back over, Alex, to the staff?
Glenn, it's not on there, but I think staff also said.
Yeah, I added, yeah. Submit color palette for staff review.
Yeah. I'll make a motion for final approval with staff review of a fourth comment about the color palette for review.
Okay, so Glenn's made a motion for final approval with I guess a board condition to provide color palette for staff review. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a point of order?
Yep.
Was that motion for final approval with staff's comments and the fourth comment?
Correct.
Well, it was just final approval with an additional comment of submit color palette for staff review. Because the other comments, that was part of the motion, I mean, the recommendation.
Understood.
Yeah, those aren't really staff comments, right? Those are just.
Right.
There weren't really any, I didn't feel like there was anything to.
Understood, I'm sorry.
There are no conditions other than what I added to the recommendation. Sorry for the confusion there.
I'm sorry, thank you.
No, we're good. All right, so.
Update that, Jay.
Glenn has made a motion for final approval with a board condition that the color palette be provided to staff for review. Is that right, Glenn?
That's correct.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Bill.
Bill.
Yep. So I'm going to put that to a vote. Glenn?
Aye, in favor.
Bill?
Aye, in favor.
Fillmore?
Excuse me. Aye, in favor.
Right. Chair votes aye in favor. And so the motion carries unanimously.
Thank
and that's
you.
it. So motion to adjourn.
Okay, very good. Is there a second for that motion?
I second it.
All right, good
All
evening,
right, guys. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. You as well.
Right.
Yeah, this was less painful than the last time.
Well,
except
more smoothly.
Except that it took 4 hours.
Well, it took 4 hours to do 7 last time. We got almost twice that many done tonight.
Okay. Progress. Thanks, Alex.
Progress.
Yes. Alex, send me whatever I need to sign, and maybe like a recusal form, a couple of recusal forms too, probably.
Yeah, I'll make. I think I put the recusal forms hopefully in the Dropbox. If not, I'll send them.
Oh, that's the okay.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Alex, I guess I need to send you a recusal.
Yeah, I'll check if it's in the Dropbox. If not, I'll send it to you, and then technically send it to Jay, and then he'll send it to me.
Thank you, and I apologize for not acknowledging that address when I was reading through it.
When you said you need to recuse, I was like, wait, I knew you had worked on that property. I actually even mentioned it today when we were looking at it. I didn't even think about it.
I usually identify projects by client names, not addresses, and it fanned me. I'm sorry.
No problem.
No problem.
All good. Bill, you missed